session. And at that time, nobody really brought any concrete changes. And so it's back again so that we can.
I sent an email with a few suggestions that I would like to see. I guess I'm not totally comfortable with the resolution as it stands, simply because it gives the out to the legislators of let's just push it a year. I think we all agree that the current system, as it's structured, is flawed in and of itself. So I don't want to give them the ability to continue it at all, or the idea that we are fine with it once testing is fine. So either we eliminate that after that, or I've also sent some other language that suggests a structure that is, I believe, more transparent and more accurate to reflect more the strengths of the districts that it's evaluating. So I don't know if you had any.
We actually had discussed the omission in the next to last paragraph of the remainder of that sentence. So, in your email, eliminating simply is kind of neither here nor there. I mean, simply irresponsible is the same thing as being irresponsible, so it's just a language thing.
Yeah.
But if you would, you do ensure the accuracy of test results and the misleading structure of the grading system. Explain to me what you mean by misleading structure of the grading system.
Well, I'm referring back to, if you look at the third paragraph on the front, the first page, it says, the Germantown Board of Education believes that the letter grading system will be grossly misleading to the public. So I'm referring back to what we've said at the beginning. I felt like it ties it back in structurally.
Okay. And maybe we just need to add the word letter in there instead of the grading system. Maybe just use that same word, maybe letter grading. Yeah.
Because that's what it says.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be.
And that'd be a little bit more.
I'm more comfortable with that.
Yes, I'm very comfortable with that. I do think because if we are to remove after the or statement, we do need to refer not just to the testing in that statement, because then it's making a stronger case.
Yeah, no, I didn't have a problem. Because we'd
already talked about
it.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to make those changes now?
Yes.
Okay.
So first we're going to add, and the misleading structure of the grading system.
Of the letter grading
The letter grading
system.
system to the second paragraph.
Second paragraph?
After the word result.
The second paragraph on the second page.
Second page.
I'm sorry,
It's
the second
easier
paragraph
if
on
you
the second
count
page.
as one. Okay, accuracy of the
Count,
test
yeah.
results.
It says,
And
whereas-
misleading structure of the letter grading system.
Can we add one
It's the
term in
ninth
there?
paragraph.
Can we add,
Single.
I would say weighted,
Weighted.
Oh,
the weighted
Letter
letter
grading.
grading system. Because the challenge with
Like
it, which
that.
is the conversation that we had, was the fact that they are distilling all these
That's right.
components of school systems into one grade.
Into a
So
formula.
who's deciding whether attendance is more important, or
Absolutely.
achievement is more important, or growth is more important? They have skewed the data by putting in percentages. So it would be my request just to put in the word weighted.
and maybe add that then on the third paragraph so that we kind of keep that consistent, where we talk about the letter grading system will be grossly
Weighted.
misleading. To your point, it's weighted. That's what you're
I think
talking
that
about.
would be good to
Oh,
add.
I'd hate for them to play a game of saying, let's change it from A to F to highly successful.
Which is what they've already started,
Yeah,
right?
so it's the exact same game. That's not as much the concern as it is weighting, and have they embedded a bias towards certain performance in their weighting.
And the weighted letter grading system.
Yes.
Believes in it.
And then we'll add weighted on the next, the page before.
So-
Yes,
Third
that's
paragraph.
fine, that's great.
That's fine.
That's good. And then,
But I predict that'll be
That, you're right.
the next game.
That the weighted letter grading
Yes.
system. Here, wait.
okay.
Is that all the changes?
No,
Okay.
I think second, you wanted to eliminate the word simply?
Yes, that was just more of a grammatical
It's redundant.
redundant.
It's
How
redundant.
did I know that was yours?
It just kind of struck me as a little aggressive, but, I mean, we can either leave it.
Second
or
paragraph.
I'm
It's
fine
second
either way.
page.
Right.
I mean, it's really better grammar to say.
Right here.
This,
Yeah, we'll just take that.
okay, take that out.
Yes.
Okay.
And then third, in this paragraph right here.
The paragraph on the second page, yes.
Everybody was in agreement, eliminate everything starting with
Or.
in the
Good with that.
alternative. So we're gonna go,
So after or, okay,
and you're gonna take out,
the entire thing.
yeah, the entire thing.
So to repeat public chapter 680, that's it, period?
Yes,
There?
ma'am.
Okay. Okay.
I'm not
Want me to change it now and upload?
Yes.
Well, we definitely.
Yeah, that would be
I know you do.
Okay, so you can go ahead and
Feel
vote on
it
it.
deep in my soul.
on the alternative.
Well, I just think it definitely
Are
communicates
we
more
gonna
what we
put
do.
in, I mean, everything starting with or replace it. Where are we gonna replace it then, though, with, or in the alternative amendment, such legislation to implement a school grading system?
Well, it's up to y'all whether you want to just stop
What
with
did you?
repeal
What would we end up deciding? What did we do?
or move forward with.
You want to
I'm
just say
okay with
repeal?
ended.
Okay, we're just gonna end it
Just
there.
ending. But I mean, if anybody else feels
Do
that
y'all
we
feel
need to put.
differently on that, or how do you feel? I didn't know if we felt like we needed to provide that other, the second option, or,
Well, they do have to have some kind of grading system.
Right.
I mean.
They do.
So it's sort of, do you want to give them an option? I mean, or do you want to make a stronger statement saying to repeal? I mean,
it's,
in the end, they have to have some kind of grading system.
but
And we might get something worse.
and that's true.
Then we'll do a resolution about
Then
the
we'll
That's
do
right.
Keep going at 'em.
So is everybody in agreement? Do you want to go ahead and end it at to repeal public chapter 680?
I think it makes a stronger statement to end it there if we're comfortable with not providing a second
Because
option.
I don't know what we would provide for second option, because I wasn't crazy about Arlington's.
Well, I just provided on mine, it was just the delineated
So you
five
could-
different.
If you want to go ahead and just make
I'm
the
having trouble
changes,
speaking right
and
now.
then
Yes,
so everybody will have it.
and right now it is in,
To keep it individual, I
Right,
I
I
just
said
think
is it
you
in
lose some of the
consent?
power
It
if you
is.
add more
It is.
words. That's just my opinion. I think it's very strong if we just leave it.
Do you want to leave it
I
there?
don't know what we do.
What's-
No,
Yeah.
yeah,
And we can, to Jason's point, we can, that's exactly right. We can, if we want to, we can advise, we can pass another resolution as a superintendent.
Was everybody in
mentioned.
agreement with those changes?
Yes, ma'am.
That Ms. J was making? And so if you're in agreement with those, do you want to leave it on the consent agenda with those changes?
Well, the only thing I would say is, I think one of the things we lose when we put stuff on the consent agenda is the ability for the public to understand why we're doing what we're doing and to really bring focus to it. And I would recommend pulling it off just so that takes more, again, more strength in saying that.
but I think consent just means you're all agreed to it. It doesn't have anything to the importance of the.
But I
Well,
think
but
what
you
she's
just don't
saying-
speak to
Oh,
it.
you want to be.
Right, it gives the chair the ability
To discuss.
speak to
Okay.
how we came about the resolution and how we've now made it our own. Right.
Okay.
And we amended it during the work session. And then, I mean, I don't think.
I don't
we
say it's
have
not
much to
controversy,
say
no,
about it.
it's just, I think it just calls attention to it so that it's not lost in the consent agenda, so that people understand that we're,
we're taking a stand.
and we're very serious about it.
So make it 10,
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we'll take it.
Add it to the board action.
Should we
Yes.
make it number 10?
Okay.
or whatever the number is.
Yeah.
I think it should be 9,
It'll be 9F.
Yeah.
9F.
becomes 9F, okay?
Okay, next is the resolution on the vetting resolution that Ms. Parker was going to bring back to us at this work session. I think everybody should have a copy.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Ms. Parker, do you have anything to say or add?
Once we vote on this, we'll be ready to send it to the other municipalities.
Okay.
They suggested we do that, and then they can vote on it, and then it'll be stronger to take for our legislators.
The one change I had was just to make it consistent with our other resolutions where we say Germantown Board of Education instead of Germantown Municipal School Board, just so that it doesn't appear to be, it just goes with our name, Germantown Board of Education throughout. And then I didn't know in the 5th paragraph, do we have concerns about our budgets as well? Not only an impact to instructional time, but would we like to include budgets or money, you know, where they're trying to implement things that would
Yes.
cost us money? Should we add that wording in there as well?
Yes.
Without financial support.
There you go.
So for example, the
Impact in instructional time
PC,
and
what is it,
financial.
280?
PC 289.
PC
Yeah.
289 is a
That's right,
perfect
yeah.
example.
Yeah.
Okay, wait a minute.
Just
Where
wait to
did
see
you
the
want to
stats.
insert that?
In the 5th paragraph, where it talks about that reviews proposed legislation impacting instructional time, and maybe impacting instructional time and districts' financial,
Operating budget.
yeah, or operating budget.
Yeah. Well,
Or it was- it could
looking
be
at the
better
one
somewhere
above.
else.
I was looking at the one above. These bills are
Okay.
often mandated to fit into the district's
Yes,
daily
that's where I
schedule
was.
without financial support.
Which bullet are you talking about?
The
The
second
one
row?
before it.
One,
Yeah,
two,
it's the
three,
one before.
4, where it says, whereas these bills are often mandated to fit into the district's daily schedule without financial support.
And maybe say, and maybe without, because sometimes it could be the physical education where it's not a financial impact, it's just a craziness in the schedule.
But it is financial impact, because then you're having to look at how many teachers you have,
Mhm.
because your schedule won't fit. And so I think that there's both there.
And I
If
would-
we just change where it says, whereas these bills are often unfunded
Yes.
mandates
That would be good.
to fit into the,
And it
we
says-
have hit everything that
And
they've
it
talked about.
says
If we-
often, so it will
Yes.
not.
Well, and maybe then, and then in that next one where we say proposed legislation impact in instructional time without funding.
Yes.
Well,
And without
but
funding.
I'm gonna tell you where it's strongest, is if we changed the first resolved. Because remember, a whereas is just the background.
Oh, no, yes, I agree, if we go down. Yes, I agree, completely agree. Because you're right, we need to carry it all the way down, absolutely.
Okay, a grammar thing.
So what is it then?
So we go, and the 4th one, we say, whereas these bills are often unfunded
Unfunded.
mandates
Mandates.
Change it, yeah,
to fit
mandates.
into the district's daily schedule. And then in the next paragraph, create a vetting committee that reviews proposed legislation impacting instructional time
Without funding.
without, now,
Is it and without-
and without funding.
No.
Well,
No.
Because
doesn't
then
mean-
you're limiting.
It
the-
only
the
to both.
The loophole
Has to
is
be
that it
both.
has to be both.
Both.
If you put the and in there, you're
Then it has
saying
to
it
be
has to have both, it has to meet both criteria.
So let me ask you this, are we okay with them changing our instructional time if they give us money? Or do we want to have it still be able to talk
No,
about?
I know, that's why I said, let's skip down and see if we can rework the resolve, or just create a vetting committee that reviews.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying, so don't make any changes to that paragraph?
That way,
Okay.
do
Down
it
to
in
the resolve.
And to create a vetting committee that reviews proposed legislation.
Or,
No, not or.
Well, it's just proposed legislation impacting instructional time without financial support.
But again, it would
Would
then
that still be a both
it would
and
still
as
be
opposed to
okay that we
both?
would have it.
See, because I think the
There are
beauty
these
of the
proposed.
vetting committee is it looked at everything.
Mhm.
right? How about, what if you said something about to create a vetting committee that reviews any proposed legislation impacting instructional time or budget? Or operation, or budget?
I like
Like
that.
budget, I'd say
Can you
budget.
repeat that, please?
Yes.
So
It's,
Yeah.
the General Assembly to create a vetting committee that reviews any proposed legislation impacting instructional time or something budget. Help me with that part.
What is that officially called?
Unfunded?
upper or,
Or
No.
a district budget.
District operational
District
operational
operating
budget?
budget?
What is it
Um,
Or how
called
would
when
you
you
do-
file it?
because I don't know whether it's, see, the issue is not necessarily So this is where we get into.
Right.
It's not necessarily budget. They can
Could be
give us
funding.
a
That's right.
mandate that says, hey,
That's
you need
true.
to hire this many teachers.
That's right.
And it has
That's right.
nothing to do with the budget.
No.
It's just that you put a fiscal.
Or how about?
How about
any-
without funding through
Any
BEP or
proposed
something like that?
legislation impacting instructional time.
Because isn't that?
Or-
Or without funding,
Or providing,
Or provide,
or without providing.
oh no, we need to use
Or
the same
fiscal
language.
impact.
Here we got, I got it.
here,
Okay, so we need to use the same language. So
Yes.
if we're saying impacting instructional time or impacting district fiscal capacity.
that works.
So Ms. Vijay, that was on that, you got that
Should I
paragraph?
put impacting twice or just?
Yes, I think it's,
Yeah, so that it's two things.
it's two separate
Yes,
things.
mhm.
So that gets us out of the, hey, it's a
It could be one or the other.
Or
I agree.
impacting fiscal?
district.
Of course, Amy knows it's true.
Fiscal
Yeah, I'm not-
capacity.
I'm not a
District.
fan of that at all. I'd rather have a different verb there if we're gonna do that.
I would put, what do you think about responsibilities or fiscal?
I like
Requirements,
fiscal
requirements.
capacity.
I like
Put
capacity.
I do too.
Capacity?
I do like.
I do, I like this.
Fiscal capacity.
I like capacity.
Yeah, I did, impacting instructional time or fiscal capacity, that works. Don't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
That way
And then,
So overall, we're taking out municipal,
We're adding unfunded mandates
dates.
to fit into the daily schedule, and we're adding the clause of or impacting.
The
district fiscal capacity. Yes.
and then,
Is it
and then
district
through.
or district's fiscal capacity?
Can,
I would-
District.
District, yes, ma'am.
District.
No, no, no
okay,
possessive.
so real, I'll appreciate,
No,
there are a couple of small grammar items. The district's daily schedule, the fourth whereas down, we need an apostrophe.
Apostrophe.
And does district need to be capitalized?
Capitalized, yes. Okay.
And then,
Also, do you have another grammar? 'Cause
I had
have
one
some-
before that.
Okay, go for it.
The third paragraph, there doesn't look like there's a, well, I didn't know, is oftentimes one word?
Yes,
Okay.
but I would put a comma after, but anyway, that's fine. Then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th whereas down, this committee may, does it need to say shall?
Yeah,
Or
not
does
may.
that provide an out for them not to put, it's may versus shall?
well, but you could always use, and there's a huge argument, that we can have it another day in the fun,
Yeah,
about using should instead of shall,
okay.
because it's.
It's more
a very
action.
Strong.
Action,
it's
yeah.
a
So,
strong-
yeah, I'm good with
It's
should.
I'm fine with
Yeah,
should.
mhm.
I just was
Should
trying to.
instead
This
of
committee
shall.
should,
Should.
may,
Should be.
should be
Should
composed.
be.
May is a little
When I get ready to speak.
too flexible.
Yeah, but had I been running
This
resolution.
is changed to should instead of may.
Okay.
Okay.
And then just throughout where it says Germantown Municipal School Board. it should-
Germantown Board of Education.
Yes, ma'am. You're good.
She's changed that.
And then the
Whatever
date down at the
official name
bottom.
No,
needs to-
I changed it
Already, okay. I didn't catch that, sorry.
Okay, any other changes?
You know, I looked right at it and it didn't even dawn on me.
Yeah, it was not September, yeah.
Any other changes? And do you want this on the consent, or do you
That's
want
when
this
we originally voted.
voted on
I would pull it out again for the same reason, to make it a strong statement that we're trying to alert people as to what we're doing.
I don't disagree, I just want to make sure when we start pulling these things out that we're not adding,
Where's the,
that we're going to do it more to alert everybody and share with everybody than it is just to discuss it.
I would anticipate it just being, yeah, a chairman discussion and
No,
a
I
vote
don't
is what
disagree.
Do you want to put both the resolutions under
it?
one?
Yes.
Or
Yes,
just
I
nine?
think that would be
DF.
great.
I would just
Mhm.
put them
That's
under the
fine. Okay.
nine, I said D, 9F.
Yes, nine.
Okay.
thank you, Ms. Parker. Thank you.
Yes,
That
that's a
looks
great job.
Thank you, Ms. Vijay, for getting all those down. Okay. Next is the annual review of board policies. Were there any? No. Questions, any changes?
think Ms. Jones had found a few typos.
Yeah, just a small,
So there were hyphens and then
Yeah,
the
there's
word
a
lead, I
couple
think, needed
Yeah.
to be
And
dropped.
let need to be under executive committee.
nothing of true substance.
But you don't have to, for that type of change, you don't
You
have
have
to
to
vote.
approve it. Mhm.
Okay. So no one has any comments on that then? Okay. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the revision of policies, honor rules award and class ranking, and the child abuse and neglect, and it's going to be up for second reading. Did anybody have any other questions? Did we make any changes at all?
Are we skipping the school board, the vision development addition to policy
yeah, the-
number
yeah.
1.1001?
I didn't know where she put it.
I put it at the very end, but we
Oh,
can
okay.
have
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's at the
It's at
end?
the
Yeah.
end.
Okay,
I just
'cause
added it to the
It came
end.
up in my,
Yeah, I just added it to the end.
Okay,
on
that's
the
fine.
electric thing, or in
Yeah.
this thing, it came up.
So is it
already.
number 5? Like, is it added as number?
So the honor roll awards
Okay,
and
yes.
class.
Also
Yes, we'll
there.
just we'll circle back to that at the end.
The new copy has the discussions that we had
About the final.
last.
Yes.
So the line 23 was the item in question when we left.
Mm-hmm.
The last meeting, Mr. Manuel and I sat down and researched several other districts, just locally and then across the nation that have IB programs. So if you're in 9th or 10th grade, you do not take a course that ends with an IB exam. So it's like a pre-AP course, so to say. So it's an advanced course. So we thought we would leave that line 23 in there as is, because if it is an advanced course, it will count the same as our honors courses with the new grading system, because it's not ending with a culminating exam. So
And
we
there's
thought we would
always
leave it the same.
confusion with people coming over. I was in the IB program, they'll say, and they say, but you weren't taking the IB courses yet, you were taking the pre-IB
Okay.
courses. And so this just provides clarification that.
As to how they'll
as to
be
what it
treated.
was.
Okay.
Until they, just like the AP classes, until they're taking that test at the end of the course, it's not a true
True ID. Okay.
So it stays the same as we last discussed,
Okay.
as we left it.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Next was the child abuse and neglect second reading. Were there any changes? I don't think there were.
No, there were
So-
not.
So we'll move on then to number 4. This is a revision of policy 2.805, purchasing. Is this Mr. Cathy or Mr. Jones? And I think you also wanted to request to waive the second reading.
Yes, just in case an emergency purchase or situation would arise. But Josh and I discussed this, and these revisions are at his request or recommendation. We looked at the definition of an emergency purchase and felt that it was too stringent, so we added language to address what might affect educational activities or day-to-day operations.
Has something come up?
Yes.
Yes.
That's my question.
Usually
Why-
there's a.
There's a reason.
Yes.
Why?
Two things came up in the
Okay.
past month. The first one was over at Houston Middle School, the old Telecore Primex system that controlled the clocks literally just gave. And it's so old, you couldn't repair it, couldn't replace it. Putting my old principal hat on, clocks and bells are a big deal on a day-to-day operational basis. The kids live by them. They ring 6 or 7 times a day. If you're running on silent bells, this teacher might let out 3 minutes before that. It's in my opinion, a major disruption. So when you replace the system, you've got to replace the clocks as well. The system controls the clocks, and the old clocks are compatible with the old system. So long story short, when we went out and started pricing the system that we wanted to replace it with, it was over our purchasing limit. And when we went to look at our emergency purchasing policy, someone has to die or school has to close in order to do an emergency purchase. And while clocks are not going to kill anyone and they're not going to close school, they did cause a major disruption to Houston Middle School. And we couldn't move forward with the purchase because it was above our purchasing limit. And I went and spoke to Mr. Gomes and said, I don't think we ever want to have a policy that disrupts us from fixing problems and making sure that school operates on a day-to-day basis. That was one. The other one was at Farmington. We had a boiler or hot water heater go out that controls hot water to the kitchen. And we were able to do enough maintenance on it to make it breathe through Christmas break, but wouldn't have been enough to get it to go very much longer.
And that would have shut down food production and.
Cafeteria.
Health Department regulations.
violation. So those were the two situations that came up that made us request this change in wording on the emergency purchasing policy.
Clarify for me the difference between those two statements. I'm a little bit, the first one I get, and I think it's conditions which may lead to major disruption of educational activities.
Yeah, that actually
That's-
comes
that-
from some of our federal language
That
and
sounds-
definition
right.
of.
That's good. Mhm.
The conditions which have an adverse effect on day-to-day operations, I mean, that tends to be a little more fuzzy to me. If you have a pothole in the pavement, that disrupts car line, which disrupts day-to-day operations. So I just feel like it's a little fuzzier, and I wanted to have a better understanding of
What was
how
the
do we.
difference between the two?
That's a good
I guess?
question.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I thought educational activities would apply to the classroom, if there's a technology issue or situation, and then day-to-day operations would affect the building or
Or
grounds.
cafeteria,
Okay,
or
cafeteria.
non-instructional versus, so you were trying to delineate
like
between
diversify.
instructional
Yeah.
versus non-instructional, not
Non-instructional.
Would
level
that
of.
not impact
could-
educational activities too?
Or maybe could we just add a word within
Yeah,
the
it might
educational
not.
activity, is there another,
might not,
like, educational and/or
There are some
True.
things that
operational
they still have
And
activities,
class.
something like
And
that?
Ms. Oath, that's a
Yes.
great question. I mean, it just gets into gray a lot, so.
But that's where the gray
That's
is.
where
That makes
gray
me,
is.
I guess where that makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't want it to be so loose that there's, not that you're gonna go around with your credit card and just say,
Right.
woo, woo, we're
No.
spending it all your money, but having a better,
And I don't think, this doesn't delineate or doesn't remove the requirement that it has to be budgeted.
Right.
If we were going to spend this money, it wasn't budgeted, we still have to come before the board and say, this was an emergency.
and we did this.
Yes. So this is money that's already budgeted for a
Because-
specific purpose.
yeah.
It's just the requirement of, do we have to go out to bid, or do we have to go out? So that's more of an issue
Right,
than that.
again, but I don't want us to get caught, not going out to bid for something that we probably should have gone out to bid for.
Right.
Agreed
Does that make-
1,000%.
do you
Right.
see-
Yeah, the reason I threw day-to-day operations in there, and this was kind of where we got down in the weeds discussion. So if there's a classroom that doesn't have heat or AC, does that disrupt educational activities? I think some people would argue no, and others people would argue yes. If my child's cold, they don't learn as well.
Right.
Or if there's not heat and it's 10 degrees outside, yes, that does have it. So that's where you start, some people would argue either side on that. I would
Right.
say, yeah, that's a disruption to day-to-day operations, educational activities, you name it. Same with the kitchen.
Right.
Could the school operate without a kitchen? I guess it could. Is it a disruption of the day-to-day operations, putting extra burden on administration and things of that nature? Yeah, it's a huge, huge inconvenience not to have a kitchen. But does it affect the kids' learning on that day? I don't know. So that's why the second one was added.
Right.
I just don't want to ever be in a situation where policy prevents us from
Can
Doing the
fixing
right thing.
things,
Right.
or doing the right thing.
I think what
Common
bothers
sense.
me about that one is it's just adverse effect.
Right.
If we could put major disruption of educational activities or day-to-day operations.
Yes.
Just combine
Yes,
the
just
two.
combine the
Combine.
two,
Agree with
yes.
that.
I think,
It's a stronger,
'Cause
then
they
it
d-
has to be a major,
Yes.
I think.
and then
it-
you
it
can
could
make
be
that
better.
argument, it is major, and
Yeah.
this is
Right.
why we believe
And
that it's major.
It'll go through the channels to
Yeah.
evaluate and be approved, so.
So remove the last bullet and add,
And just put or day-to-day
day-to-day
operations at the end of that
After,
second to last one.
yeah, I think that's right. I just was a little, couldn't really delineate between the two.
Right.
I was having a hard time.
Sure.
And I think
And
that-
again, to your point, waiving second reading is from a timeliness perspective of making
Right,
sure
should
that you
something
don't.
occur,
Correct. The reason
Next
I'm
week.
asking to waive second reading, that they've been without clocks at Houston Middle for over a month now, and that's just, to me, it's absurd. It
Yeah.
hurts, every day I wake up and I think they still don't have clocks working. I take pride in making sure the facilities run as they're supposed to, so I don't want to be ever be in that situation
Right.
again.
Yes. Okay.
Any other questions on this policy?
That's very good, thank you.
Okay. Next is probably Mr. Kathy, revision of policy student transportation management after first reading. And again, a request to waive second reading. I think this policy is based on legislation last year. They were talking about putting seatbelts in, and I think instead of seatbelts, they came up with other.
Yeah, so I like y'all's resolution to vet things
Yeah.
properly through educators and other folks.
Again, back to
because-
common sense, right?
Yes.
That
And this
was
is,
Ms. Parker's idea.
Yes.
And it's a great one. And this is born out of the right heart. This is due to the incidents that happened in Chattanooga and Knoxville, where there was student loss of life. So this is definitely born out of the right heart. The intentions are definitely in the right place. And let me grab my notes so I can go through the difference real quick.
Do we have bumper stickers ordered already?
We do. We do have the bumper stickers. We do have the numbers on the back of the buses. And I didn't want to bring this policy to the board until we had all those things in place. I didn't want to put a policy in place that we're immediately violating as soon as it was in place. So, but yes, this is PC 289. I went to a mandatory state training last month to go over the state requirements and implementations in Jackson. And the like I said, it was born out of the right heart. It's trying to put more accountability measures on buses, and the key changes that we went over in that training, and as this policy relates, there's now going to be a state fleet inventory and maintenance database where we are required to enter every bus. They age out after 15 years. You're tracking the maintenance that's done on the buses, so that's one accountability measure that's being put in place.
Are you going to have to do this?
I will have to do it, but it's going to be a cooperative work in progress because we have our shared services transportation folks, and we outsource it to Durham. They're going to have a hand in this as well because they're the ones that actually do the maintenance on said buses. So we have met on numerous occasions about what this is going to look like, and I did my best to reflect it in the policy that we are ultimately responsible for it, but it's got to be a cooperative or collaborative effort. I don't know any other way to put it, but ultimately the responsibility falls to us as the school district. The other changes is they are now keeping a full-blown state database of drivers. They've also put more restrictions and stringent requirements on drivers, which had some of the rural districts really hollering about and saying, well, we're already short bus drivers. We're hurting to staff those positions as it is. But they have upped the driving age to 25, starting January 1st. Now, they will grandfather everyone who prior to that, but starting January 1st, every bus driver has to be 25 and have 5 years of a clean driving record. Of course, I immediately raised my hand and said, what does that mean, clean driving record? Are we talking about speeding tickets or vehicular homicide here? There's a big difference. And,
There's a wide spectrum
If
there.
it was just speeding, I would not be, yeah.
yes,
Not
so
for me.
they said they were still
Just
working
saying.
on defining that. And I said, well, will you guys finish working on defining that? Will you please send that to us so we know what the difference in a clean driving record is for drivers so that we can staff that. There is the requirement to put the number on the back of the bus. That number's there. It's 1833 bus report. And that number's up and active. I called it again this morning just to be sure.
Is that through a company that we've contracted that
It's through a company that Durham has contracted through, which we and shared services will have access to. And the website is busreport.com. Now, we haven't gone live or pushed this out to our parents yet. We will, because this is going to be a big shift or change in how business is done. And I asked the questions because our parents are used to, there's an assistant principal in charge of transportation at every school. They're used to speaking to that person or emailing that person. And so I asked the question, well, if a parent has a complaint, they're used to speaking to our people. They don't want to call a line. They want to talk to one of our district employees, and they said that's fine. But every time a parent calls a complaint into that district employee still is going to have to go to busreport.com or call the number and lodge it in the official database so that it's all centralized and there's one record of it. So we're going to do a big communication push out to our parents just to let them know that this is available. The number's on the back of the bus. This is the number. Here's the website. When you go to it, it immediately pops up, and I will have a step sheet so that you know what buttons to push and how to report and what to do there. And we're doing training with the assistant principals and principals in January to bring them up to speed on this, just so they're in the know on it. And I think those are the key changes. The other big change is the complaint process. Within 24 hours, we have to acknowledge that we received the complaint. Then within 48 hours, I asked if it could be director of schools or designee, and they said no, director of schools. So as if the superintendent doesn't.
So now I'm in the answering.
Yes, as if the superintendent doesn't have enough on his plate. He has to get within 48 hours. The investigation has begun. Steps, the wheels are rolling to investigate. And it can be anything from, I didn't like the way the bus driver looked, to they were smoking a cigarette on their break in between routes, to they took an illegal left turn, to they rolled through a stop sign. Anytime that we take a complaint, we have to, within 48 hours,
And it goes.
do an investigation, and then within 60 days of starting the investigation,
And this
we
is
have.
every district.
This is every district across the state of
So
Tennessee.
those really large districts have one superintendent.
Yes.
One superintendent.
One director of
So imagine what this would look like for Shelby County Schools. I mean, the director of schools can't, that's why they have a staff. But anyhow, I brought all of those points up. That's why your review
Vetting
board,
committee would
vetting
be-
committee would be highly, highly
Wow.
needed in this case. And, those are the changes in policy.
Hopefully that would
So
be an easy fix to the law. Or
Or
designate.
designate. I mean,
I
that's
mean,
common.
it's,
Everything
yeah,
we do is or
everything we do,
designate.
I
yeah.
don't see Dorsey doing this.
I was thinking the same thing.
I'll wait, we'll see.
A question that I have is, this is, we're not necessarily now in the business of buses. We are outsourcing.
Yes.
Is there any opportunity in this, and we look at a new contract with Durham, to push this into their court, to say this is contractually their oversight, just like anything else where you have somebody who's doing something for you, you oversee it, but not necessarily in the day-to-day weeds of, other than the director,
That's my fear, is that the legislation doesn't allow us to do that.
which is
The
a huge.
legislation puts it on us and superintendent specifically to be the lead investigator on these cases. So that's the challenge, is should it be in the court of the people who are maintaining the buses or?
Right.
Well, we
doing
still
the
have
first one?
liability. I mean, just like
Yes.
anything else where you have, if
That's
we're
right.
not overseeing it and there's a big glaring hole.
And Durham will be involved in this loop.
Right.
They will be getting the complaints just like we will, and they will be assisting, and in some cases, even leading the investigations.
yes,
because
they will
Because
be
because if
included.
they move their buses, they're the ones who have to tell us, we
Correct.
changed this bus on this route. So,
That's right.
that's a lot of paperwork.
Everything in here specifically says director of schools.
Yeah.
That is
So
correct.
at this
It's-
time,
yeah,
there's
it's-
no way to get out of it.
Right, I think we've hit on our next resolution.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right, Betsy. And again, that would be a very quick, easy,
Very.
yeah.
All of this information and the complaint form will be on our website as well.
Yes, ma'am, it will be.
Any other questions for Mr. Kathy?
Good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just can't wait.
Hang in there.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Lisa
Mr.
didn't
Kathy.
say good.
Next is this new as well, Mr. Kathy, approval to join PPM National Cooperative.
This is Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones?
It's in your folder. if you want it.
Mayor, this is the one. We're about to hit your.
Yeah, we're requesting the board to approve for us to join and participate with the Pennsylvania Education Purchasing Program for Microcomputers, PEPM. We learned about them through research, actually looking for pricing quotes on the Bell system. And also we're impressed with the number of technology vendors that participate in the program. So no obligation, this is just another option for us to obtain pricing.
And this is just similar to the other cooperatives we've already.
Yes.
Exactly, yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Jones? No?
Stay right there.
You might as well stay. Next is the budget
Oh,
amendments.
You were almost out.
So, yes. Next are numerous miscellaneous budget amendments which seem to all appear to be connected to our federal
Yeah,
funding.
13 through 17.
So we'll start with the first few, 13 through 17. These are going to be the budget amendments that we've been waiting to present to you, and we're excited to, because this is the additional funds that we've received from the state. So once we submitted our consolidated funding application to the state, then they came back with any revisions as they were working through some of the kinks. So we were on their timetable, and finally they have approved it. So we now need to make sure that our Skyward financial system matches up with our budgets that are in E-Plan.
Or the E-Plan.
And so I'll briefly run through and give you a description of each of the budget amendments and what they include. And then I'll trade out and let Sarah come up with her IDEA budget amendments. So Budget Amendment 13, this is our consolidated admin. Any of the positions that I bring up within these budget amendments were approved at the July meeting, and we thought we'd have easy access to this money. So consolidated admin has our Title I Federal Programs Coordinator, our Federal Programs Coordinator who's handling Title III, and then a financial secretary to handle all the money coming through with the $2.2 million that we have. It also includes in that budget travel between schools, office supplies, and technology needs for those positions. Budget Amendment 14 is our Title I budget.
And I will say, how many revisions did we have to submit to?
I think
Was
we're
it
up to
10?
10. And then
So-
they've just come back this past week that said they had a flaw in the funding formula, and so they've cut, I think, our Title I by 9,000. So when they send that final out to us, then we'll have another budget amendment to go.
And
So-
are we posting these in January, or have we already posted these positions?
We have not, so we are going to post the ones that you'll see on title. We started and filled 2 positions, and then they came out and said, don't hire anybody. And so we said, okay, we won't. So we've used those, because I didn't fill the position in my department when Missy left. And so we used that money to cover these positions.
So we were paying for them out of general fund
And
until
now
we
they'll
can.
be moved out of federal. So, but the other ones we stopped, those are the
Okay.
ones we
And
hired.
the timing now gives us pause because we don't want a domino effect in the school. There are 2 real
Right.
issues. First, if you think about taking teachers during the school year to fill positions, that's always traumatic for students, for families. So that's a concern. So that's something we've got to balance and look at what's the effect on the school. But then also, we've talked about the short-term timing of this funding. We know that over the next 3 years, this money's going to drop back. So we're at 2.1, 2.2 million. That's going to drop back to 200,000 when it's all said and
So
done.
these jobs won't be
So these
in
jobs are
existence.
not permanent jobs for people. So that's another problem that it poses. So just know that the posting and hiring of these individuals is going to be, we're going to have to stagger it to do what's best for schools and what's best
And
for
we're
Dr. Park's
making
team.
sure in the job description that says this is for 1 year only, subject to grant approval or money available for the next year. And then also, during the interview process, we'll make certain that everybody understands this is not a guaranteed position year after year. What we do know after this first year, because we are just getting funds and we're halfway through the school year, is that we're going to have to submit a waiver, because normally you're supposed to spend 85% of your funds. And if
In
you
the
don't
first
spend 85%, then you have to either release your funds or submit a waiver to keep those as carry forward into the new, or carry over into the new year. So we already know we're going to submit a waiver, because I'm not going to lose this money. And we're eligible because we've never submitted a waiver before. You're only allowed to submit one every 3 years. So we're going to go ahead and do it on this first round. And like he said, just because we have approval doesn't mean that we're going to go through and fill the instructional coach positions at this point. We may wait until the spring so that schools have time to plan. Any teachers that want to take a step out of the regular classroom can look at those options and not be rushed, and we'll make it through. We'll make it through with those. But the Title I budget is the largest one. It has our district set-asides, which we're allowed to pull money aside for any instructional initiative, and that's where we put the instructional coaches that we mentioned in July. That also includes all of the schools' budgets collectively, so instructional supplies. Schools wanted to put money in tutoring for teachers to provide tutoring opportunities for students. It also has professional development and technology. So those are your big level categories in the Title I budget.
One question, just going back to your timing, because I think that's great that we're letting people know. Do you think that we're going to have teachers that want to move into these roles?
Mm-hmm.
And are they comfortable with that, knowing that they could potentially go away? I mean, how do we handle, I mean,
They
it's
could-
risky, right? I
They
mean,
could be integrated back into the regular classroom down the road.
but only if you have a
position
position.
open.
But they'll know
Because
that.
these are a lot of positions.
But
Yes, they
Dr.
are.
Park will be that's going to be a personal decision for
We'll
the
know,
teacher.
and they'll know it, but they'll also know when we get our preliminary allocations around March of that year, whether we have enough money or not to continue them on. And so at that point, that's when they can start talking to the principals to say they may not go back to the school that they came from, But that's something that we're being upfront and honest with in the beginning.
Okay,
to
so that,
say-
so that's, it's a
It's a
risk,
problem.
okay, so yeah, I mean, I would, I'm risk
Yeah,
adverse, so that would be really a hard problem for me, but, okay.
I guess that's one of the concerns I have is also that the schools get used to having some of these people in place, and then we don't
They
have
are
the funding
nice.
for it. It's nice to
It's a
have these
nice
things.
position, yes.
And so now we have to make some budgeting decisions once we lose that funding. I don't know that we'll have the funding to continue it, because we'll have a brand new
Agree.
elementary school to staff and.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
into the public
so-
school system.
Exactly, but I think what needs not only to be made clear to those we're hiring, but to the schools.
The
Don't get
administration.
used to this.
Mhm.
And we have.
Don't-
that-
yeah,
that's the
okay, okay,
conversation.
that's- okay, good,
When they were
okay.
developing their own school plans about how to spend the money, I think that was part of the rationale of why they chose to spend them on specific topics. or
Perfect,
issues.
okay.
Then some
Because then
schools have
everyone knows.
elected.
It's,
Yes.
yeah, it's just.
The
I get a
district
little-
set aside for the instructional coaches is the one that is probably going to affect my department and every school.
Right.
More so than what the schools have set in their own budgets to
Okay.
have
Okay.
for a person to handle their Title I and also provide interventions. So for us, it would go back to those responsibilities that we have shared with instructional coaches in the academic department. It would be bringing those back in and putting them all back on the instructional supervisors if we don't
Okay.
have funding again. So it's just an extension of our department with those instructional coach positions, but it does help. It helps us a lot, but we all know
It could come
what
back.
we're dealing with.
Right, right, you know,
With
that what could happen.
The 5 interventions, so there'll be an intervention for each school.
Well, and we left that up to the principals.
Okay.
So we approved 5 positions for each school. Some principals came in and said that they just want to pay somebody a stipend.
Yeah, because I saw
Do that.
2 was a tutoring stipend, so I was trying to.
So one is a stipend for, Dogwood said they wanted to have a stipend for that type of position, just to have somebody there get a stipend to do the paperwork and provide any support in terms of Title I purchasing. Then other schools, two of our schools already have Title I intervention positions because they were the targeted assistant schools for. But Houston Middle said they wanted a position strictly devoted for that. Houston High School wants a position to also help with college and career readiness and tracking that ready graduate indicator and helping with those programs. And then Farmington had put in for a full position to have somebody to help manage those funds. And Riverdale already has somebody that's an interventionist there. So that's just the rundown of, you approved 5 positions for each school because we didn't know until we got into looking at what their total allocations were. And some principals said, oh, I can make that a stipend position and then use my money elsewhere. It depended on what the whole overall
school
budget
needs.
was. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Any other questions on the Title I? All right, so we'll move on to 15. This is Title II. This is our professional development grant. And historically, we have received more money than we received this year. We were cut over $100,000 in this area. And what we pay for out of this budget, and it's kind of a double-edged sword, we pay for our PD and evaluation supervisor, that's Ms. Davis. And then we have money that we put aside for the schools to go on professional development or in-service conferences. And then we also have money that we put aside for the speaker that usually comes in for the February District Learning Day. Well, when we were cut this year tremendously, it was hard for us to handle, but then it was also the blessing of, well, we got an extra $2 million in Title I, and if all schools are school-wide Title I, they can put a huge chunk into professional development. So we were cut in Title II, but all schools got way more money than they would have ever gotten for professional development based out of their allocations for Title I. So you'll see that Title II amendment, it includes a small amount plus a salary position. Any questions on that amendment? Okay, moving on along. 16, Title III. This is our English learner population. Before they submitted our final allocations, we were told we would receive less than $10,000. And to go through all of the paperwork for that amount of money when we could absorb it and pay for it out of general budget instructional supplies, we thought we would not go that route because we would have to be a part of a consortium. And being part of a consortium,
Bartlett wasn't.
we have to go through them for any purchases that we want to make, and that's very difficult.
Sure.
So then they came back and said that our allocation was a little bit over 10,000, and we said, great, we're going to use that money and put it to good use. So with our ESL program, that's what Dr. Fuller is overseeing. He is getting everybody on board because with the new accountability model, English language acquisition is a piece of it. And so we want to make sure our programs are consistent and research-based, and that's what he's really been working with those teachers, and they're doing a great job creating a procedural manual for us for ESL. But with the Title III budget, it's still a small amount of money, but what you'll see in there is we've got money divided up with instructional supplies and materials, and then professional development. Again, we think it's important if we're going to try to get everybody on the same page that we see what the newest, best trends are out there to address the needs of our students. Any questions on that? Okay, and the last one. This one is a new one. This comes to us because of ESSA. And so we're really excited about this one. This is our Title IV money. So we haven't had Title IV grant before or recently. The Title IV grant of ESSA Title IV Part A is for the needs of a well-rounded education. So within our general budget, I think you saw last year, we put aside money specifically designated for fine arts and for instrument repair and instruments in our schools. So we try to take care of those areas that we know and not protect certain amounts of money for our fine arts areas. Well then, with Title IV, they want us to focus on 3 different areas within the school system. One is the well-rounded education. So what we did is we got with our physical education teachers, our fine arts teachers, and said, okay, this money we get to spend on you. Because I found out this year that a lot of our equipment in our PE classes needed to be upgraded or we needed some extra things in our gyms and with our PE. So this is where we got with them and said, okay, we've got this much money, we're going to be able to spend it on what your needs are. And so that's what you'll see. There are caps for what each district can spend. So 20% can go to well-rounded education. 20% of our money can go to safe and healthy schools. And with that, we really focused in on the counselors and what they needed to help provide programs at their schools. So a few things that we've started looking at are behavior, bullying, suicide prevention, diversity training, safe date, why try. These are all programs that we will be implementing within our schools based on this money that we've gotten. So we're pretty excited about that, to be able to have extra funding to implement these programs that will really benefit our students. And then there is a technology piece to this to where we can purchase devices, but it can only be 15% of what's left, which really means nothing. Like we went back and forth because we wanted to do iPads. They wouldn't let us do that because it had to be 15% of what was left. And so what they said we needed to do was put that in professional development, which is what we did for that technology piece, and that's to go to the SHAPE conference. And you'll know within our PE classes we have the heart rate monitors, and so this is tying into that technology used in our PE classes. And then we're also, what's included in our well-rounded education is we have the cooling treatment, game ready, and heart rate monitors for our physical education. Plus we have some additional padding for the gym walls so that the students won't run into those, and additional supports for any of the equipment in the gyms. So we're really excited about this money, but it's going strictly out to all the schools, and we've received their feedback, and that's what they wanted to spend it on. So that's the last budget amendment.
And was that throughout every school?
It is.
Okay.
Any questions for Dr. Park on these?
Ms. Huffman?
Ms. Huffman's next.
Thank you for your work on that.
We have amendments number 18 and 19. 18 is IDEA Part B for special education. 19 is IDEA discretionary and IDEA preschool.
Okay, so highlight. With the budget amendment 18, you'll see there we had to add an additional assistant that's currently being paid out of general fund. That will be reimbursed once this is approved, just in growth at one of our schools. Another highlight is we are looking to purchase a non-passenger van at the high school so that we don't have to contract as much with Durham for our kids that are going on community-based instruction and work-based learning. They have easy access to transportation. I've learned my lessons coming out of Bartlett. There's a lot of legal when you purchase a van as to what size van to get. So thankfully, we've learned lessons from mistakes of myself and others to what size van to get. So I knew specifications on the front end. But I did account for the purchase of the van, gasoline, and insurance.
Will this
And
be
then
for like to take the
The
students to
work-based learning.
Baptist?
Yes.
So what would be the usage? I mean, how often would we use it?
Well, right now, in January, we're going to Baptist Hospital 2 days a week.
Okay.
But then our other classes go out 2 days. So I see it being utilized every day. But right now, we're out 4 days in the community. So I'm having to pay Durham.
Oh, no. I love it. I think it's a great idea. I was just wondering if it's idle, are there other uses? And is that appropriate if it's purchased with this funding and it's used for that? Can it be used for other?
Outside the school day.
So because it's paid out of IDEA, it can only be used for students on an IEP.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay.
I know where you're going.
Yeah. You're like,
Wait a second.
is it ready now?
I'm like, can we take it to Jerry's Center? But, so that was one of the big.
We're heading to New Orleans, so yeah.
How many wrestlers?
How many wrestlers can you get in the back of
That's
the
right.
Road trip.
You stack them on
Yes,
top of
yes,
each other.
yes.
Probably.
That's
Okay.
at the mini
Okay,
trips
so
to
it's-
Jackson is the other thing I'm thinking, but.
Sure, yeah, no, okay, that's what I was thinking when I saw the definition, but, figured I would ask.
That's a biggie, and then contract services, we had a huge increase in students, just in general. When you look at our December 1 count, which I know we're moving into budget season, I'm having to make up right now through contracting services. So that's where you see the increases on budget amendment 18. Any questions? Okay.
Preschool.
19 is not as exciting. It's not as much money. However, we are opening up due to numbers a new preschool classroom. So with that, to purchase the furniture, equipment, instructional supplies, the whole 9 yards. So that is the big piece of that. And that second little discretionary fund, which I didn't put in the narrative, is going to, good gracious, and now I'm going blank. This is the Ames Web Easy CBM, so our progress monitoring piece of the budget. So the state tells you have this much to purchase the program and this much for professional development, and you're basically told how to spend said money.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Ms.
Thank you
Huffman.
very much.
Thank you.
Budget amendments 20, 21, and 22 were, I believe, approved by the board last month. Number 23, we have 2 adjustments for 2 state grants that have come in. The first one is for youth risk behavior surveys. That money's going out to 3 teachers at Houston High School for actually participating or completing those surveys. $250 each, and then $250 will stay with the district for health-related supplies and materials. The Educator Preparation Work Group is a grant that Mr. Haddow received for staff development.
Okay.
'24 relates to capital projects.
Here is our portion of the county commission funding that is, that we are receiving at this time. So it is $954,720. And we put it into Mr. Cathy's budget of capital improvements. And so that'll probably be used, I think the next big items that we've talked about on that list, I think we're having a lot of issues with HVAC. Mr. Cathy, is that correct, at Farmington?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
So that will probably be one of our next big projects that we're getting ready to tackle over the summertime. We always hold these till the end of the year, in case we do have a major maintenance issue, and also we can't disrupt school for the work that needs to be done. So it is my guess that Mr. Cathy will be coming before the board to redo the HVAC at Farmington. So this is just recognizing that income
that we
at this
received
point.
it.
Yes,
Right,
that we've received.
940, and it's actually received in November.
Okay.
And then we're appropriating the 6/30/2017 reserves after audit.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, I don't follow that.
The cash balance that we had on hand, some of the purchase orders were carried forward from
Oh, yes,
prior
okay, yes,
year,
yes,
and we're
yes,
just
yes, sorry,
appropriating those
yes,
dollars.
okay.
And number 25 is our exemplary.
And so we actually,
District
since we have the budget amendment first, our agenda's a little out of sequence.
Yeah, I was thinking
so I
maybe we
guess
can skip
we
around.
will
Save it for
combine
later.
number 9. No, we can go ahead and, if the board doesn't have an issue with it,
Not
as
at
we're
all.
looking at the financials of it, talk about number 9 at the same time. And this is something that I've heard is consistent with the other districts, what they are doing. And Dr. Park can help me with some of these issues. I think one of the challenges that we talked about is the fact that it is difficult to become reward schools. It is difficult to become an exemplary district status. They are looking at your growth. They are looking at your achievement. They are looking at your performance of your subgroups. They are looking at all those issues. And I think we have to be careful not to take for granted how much work the teachers and the staff, everyone in the district, has put into becoming an exemplary district. So it's consistent with what I'm hearing other districts are doing. And of course, we have the concern of recruiting teachers and making sure that we are providing support that's comparable to other districts. That it would be my request that the board recognize this significant achievement for the district and give the employees a $250 stipend for becoming an exemplary district. And so I think the total amount, when it was all said and done for the district,
167.
was $167,000. This is non-recurring. Now, I hope it is recurring, but I think that's something that the board would need to discuss as part of, our differentiated pay plan when we start going through the budget season. I do think it's something that we need to look at it for that motivation for our staff. And I think it's important to say that this was a whole team effort. So this isn't just for the teachers. This is for the clerical in the front office, our special ed clericals who are working hard every single day to schedule meetings. I think it's important to say that we are all part of one team, and this can go a long way with our staff, and we're providing support for them. So that would be my request.
When would they
for this
get it?
Monday. As quickly
Probably,
as.
in January.
One of the things, we were having an OPEB meeting, and one of the teachers that is on our committee made a comment, because we were talking about different things, not this, but different things about teachers and what motivates them, and maybe not even just teachers, I guess employees in general, and saying that, maybe it's not always money that is the carrot, or that is the thing. So I didn't know, I don't know, y'all obviously, is there something else that besides a $250 stipend that might be viewed as a big reward that we could do? I don't know. I don't know.
I think this is one piece of the puzzle. I think this is something that would be greatly appreciated by the teachers when you think about their daily struggles. But I think too, we're always looking for ways to really appreciate them, and whether it's the design of our health insurance plan, increasing of leadership roles. I think one of the things that we need to discuss as a board, this goes to the whole plan of the new school, is looking at the teacher's workday and their amount of time for planning and the schedules of that. I think those quality of life issues are something that Mr. Haddo is also working on.
Right, yeah,
that he
that's,
wants to
yeah.
present to the board, because I think he's talked to you before about looking at a COLA for the staff, the cost of living adjustment that we saw in Bartlett and Carrville gave their staff COLAs. So I do think this is a step in the right direction, but by no means is it
Okay.
the only thing that we can do to
Okay.
honor our teachers. And I hope we're doing other things that our staff would say that we're doing to reward them and recognize their achievement.
Why 250?
I think we were looking at the total amount coming from reserve, and so I don't think it's something exorbitant. We are trying to do a reasonable amount. I can tell you that Millington's giving $500 to their staff and their employees. Arlington's doing a staggered. I think they're doing $300 and $150 for their employees. So we thought it was a reasonable amount for their performance and what they're doing.
Now, would it, you always say money's not an object, but money is always an object. But, we do have some excess from an OPEB perspective that we were just talking about. Is there an ability that we would want, I guess what I'm saying is, do you think, what we don't want to do is sometimes you make a gesture But if it's not good, if it's not grand enough, it might not be perceived well. Does that mean, I don't know if I'm articulating that well,
No,
but,
you are.
but if other municipalities are receiving something different.
Right.
Could this be viewed maybe not in the most positive light from our perspective? So I guess my question would be, if we do happen to have some excess in some other areas, how would you feel? I mean, do you feel like it should be, I don't know.
I feel like this is something that, as a board, when we get ready for this next budget season, I've already asked Mr. Haddo to do a full report.
Okay.
And he's doing a plan on when we look at differentiated pay and rewarding teachers for the work that they've done, looking at all this. So he's looking at the total cost of a 2% for all of our staff across the board. He's looking at funding, like I can tell you, like Lakeland's model, they have it built in every year into their evaluation model. So they build in, if you are level 4, level 5 teachers, along with, not only do they have the exemplary pay, but they also have a separate stipend where if you have received 4s and 5s in your evaluation, you're getting additional money. I think that's something that we have to balance with our academic team and our HR team, because it already is a high-stakes evaluation, but also if we're adding a bonus on top of that, we want it to be a growth model. So just know that Mr. Haddo is doing a full study, and we'll talk about the funding of it with Mr. Jones and see, because our ADC, which is our requirement, I think it's ADC now instead of our ARC, for our OPEB is less than it was because of the changes that we've made to OPEB. So that could be a funding source that would help formalize this going forward in the future.
That's about $100,000 less than what was budgeted.
I was along the same lines, and that it wasn't, I mean, although I wouldn't mind if someone gave me $250, but wanting the whole team to understand that this is a reward for this incredible year that we've had.
Yes.
For taking this dream of a school system to being the system that it is now and widely recognized across the state for its excellence. And I am glad it's the whole team. I'm glad we're including everybody, because it does take everybody to do this. And I just want to make sure that they know it comes with a heartfelt thank you. And I think there's not any of us sitting here that don't wish we could do 3 times that.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and I also want to, not that I don't think they deserve more as well, but we also did last year the little bonus.
The holiday.
The holiday for
with
the
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 insurance.
medical insurance
So I mean,
holiday.
I think this is in the
I
same
don't
line
want to
as
do,
that, yes.
we're, we have done some things
I think
previously.
every year we have rewarded our teachers in some way.
Capacity.
But I think you have to look at each one of the municipalities. I don't think Millington has provided anything for their teachers.
That's right.
And this is the first time. COLA is nowhere near what we are providing for our teachers. But, you know, what we want to do is, just like you said, we want to reward them the best way we know how, without having to stifle our financial situation. And that's the recommendation from you. I mean, we look to you to find out what is the best way to do this.
And
So if this is what you recommend, I'll wholly participate and support it.
I just get, I'm one of those, watch the future. I think we're setting, I'm all for it. I wish we could write a double that amount. I just want to make sure that once we set this precedent, that as we go into the budget season, you know, we're going to have to look at that and say, okay, we're setting this as the bar of once they hit this again, is that going to be expected that this is what we do, or are we going to need to look at another way to acknowledge their
If we're number
achievement?
one on the top of the state, you darn right they're going to expect it.
Oh, yeah. But
Yeah, well, yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying, though? I think
So
they're-
to your point, when Mr.
I
Haddow
get
does
you're
that, we need to
setting
just make sure it's
precedent.
built
We're
in.
setting
Whether we
precedent.
use it or we don't use
That's
it,
right.
it's there,
And
right?
the other issue is, again, we're going to be we're building a new elementary school.
that's right.
And we're already talking about having to pull from reserves for some of that and other things. And so,
Well,
I'm just saying
we'll find money.
I'm
We'll
just
definitely find
saying
money somewhere.
that anytime you are spending money, it's coming from somewhere else.
Yes.
So we need to be mindful of that moving forward. That as our budget increases with the addition of another elementary school, we just need to be mindful of that. That's all I'm going to say.
Any more discussion on exemplary pay for the district? None? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Next is update on the 2018-19 school calendar. Dr. Burr?
So we have noticed that other municipal districts have made adjustments to their 18-19 school calendar, and we're not saying that we want to propose those or not propose those to the board for review, but we think it's important that we get the calendar, or a calendar committee back together just to look at it and give us feedback, because I think it's important for you all to know the feedback from stakeholders. So if we could, we would like to reconvene a calendar committee in January to get feedback so that they could look at the other municipal districts' calendars, because what they've done is they've delayed the start date for students, and then they've built in more days for professional development. We do know that that is an issue of when we can provide professional development for our teachers without pulling them away from the classroom during the full day, or to try to get them to stay after school or come in before school. So we do already know that that is an issue across the district, but how do we address that is something that I would just like to get a calendar committee together to look at the options and just present to you in February their feedback. So then if we want to make any changes, then that can be up to you based on their feedback or not, just to keep us
The state
informed.
seems pretty willing now to do waivers at Pierce.
Yes.
Yes.
Because before you had to have a pretty,
It's one of two reasons we have found, and it's more common in East Tennessee than it has been here. So Carville and Bartlett are using it for
They're building.
construction. But Lakeland and Arlington got it approved because they are using those days for professional development. So just to clarify, we have to have 180 days of instruction. And so what they're doing is they're having less than 180 days of instruction because they have days for professional development. There were some that I think Arlington's was attractive to me because we do have attendance issues on those days right before Thanksgiving. And so they built those in as professional development days where students were off and then teachers can use flex days. So anyway,
You're right.
I think the goal
There's
is to
some
just give the
options.
board, here's what everybody else did, just FYI. And then if you all decide that you want us to reconvene the calendar committee for the purpose of, or put out a survey for the purpose of seeing whether you want us to change the calendar or do something different for upcoming years, that would be a board decision at that point.
but we've already put out this calendar.
Yes.
I mean, I'm just
It is
stating,
out.
we have already put it out.
It is
And-
something we can look at in
and-
1920.
Yeah, but, and I also want to say, I think we don't need to do it just because everybody else is doing it. We need
Yes.
to have a reason that it's best
Completely
to
agree.
educate our
And
students.
anytime you're eliminating instructional time, I get nervous.
I would agree.
Because we already have situations where principals are not allowing certain events to happen because they don't want to pull kids out of instructional time. The band won't allow the band to visit or whatever because they say it sacrifices instructional time.
So
So
I
are we
guess-
going to say as a board, well, but we'll take those three?
Yeah, that's why I say, I
Extra
think,
days.
in the end, it has to be what's best to educate our students. And maybe PD for our teachers
I was
is
just about to
best
say, that's
Yes,
right.
and that
to
may be
educate
it.
our students. I'm not saying,
Right.
but that, if
Or maybe
that's
there's
it.
a good balance that we can
That's
find
right.
in between that.
I think we're fortunate that we can gather the data.
Yes.
And see how it works for all the other
Exactly.
districts.
Let them be the guinea pig.
Well, and to that
We're
point, Linda, that you
picking up
made,
on that.
which I think is a good one, is that we have a calendar that's set, and I know that there's a lot going on in January. I know that y'all have a lot going on. The question is, I would say, is do we need to rush? I mean, if
It
we're.
could be February.
Oh, yeah, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that I
Don't
think
overwhelm
that
yourself.
when you look at everything that y'all have on your plate and that we're doing, I think it would be very beneficial to the board to understand everything that's going on in the municipalities, for us to be able to have an educated decision of this is where we think we might want to go. But I don't necessarily know that we have to make that change really quickly versus we could have time to digest it to say we've already committed to these dates or whatever the calendar committee says. But that'd just be my counsel is don't.
We've already set those dates.
Yeah,
I wanna be
don't
quick
push
change
yourself
those.
to go beyond. I just think it's good that we're saying that we're aware of it and that we need to do it. But if PD is top of mind, which it seems to be, it would be good to know what the benefit could be.
Right.
And to throw in just a little extra little wrench, maybe look at half-days on exam days. I know that probably attendance offices would really appreciate half-days on exam days, and then the full day, those remaining half days could be used for professional development or the teachers getting their grades together for the end of the semester. Just throwing that out there is something that the calendar committee could potentially look at.
Yeah, but I think, I liked Arlington's right before Thanksgiving.
Or
Yeah.
both.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, as a parent, having 2 days to travel, yeah, no, that would be awesome.
Well, and to your point, I think you had mentioned it as it being a flex day. I think
Yes, for
that
teachers.
that is a big carrot
that's a
for
carrot.
teachers to get their PD in. And I think that could be a huge win
Absolutely.
for
Yeah, that
the
could be a
team.
win-win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be to your point, I think that's why they're listening to the waivers, is that it's not that you're just taking days off.
Right.
You're
I mean,
utilizing that to make a difference.
You could do the same thing with half-days on exam days.
Mhm. Do you want half-days for exam days?
Any other
I do. Okay,
questions?
just-
Or
In case you
discussion?
didn't.
I think I got it.
Amy wants it all.
I want it all. I want my cake and ice cream and everything.
Thank you, Dr. Clark. Next is the new central office funding.
Okay, so I wanted to give you time before we really have to make a decision on this. We would not want to vote on this until the January meeting where we'd have to work with
Oh, thank you.
the city and we would have to have an MOU, but I want to give you an update of where we were. So we have some visuals so that you can see where they are in the design and the planning. So the first is just an exterior rendering of what the central office would look like. The next is the overall blueprint of the plan. But we're going to look and highlight some of the areas. And I would say that our starting point was what Arlington had done with their central office. So they said, we are welcome if we want to go there and take a tour to see what theirs looks like. We tried to take theirs and make it ours and amp it up, but I think a lot of the features you'll see in the layouts are the same. Arlington has a separate warehouse storage unit, separate building. Ours would be connected to our building. So you can see, and I'm on this page right here, that actually has the blow up of the space. They have done some renderings too of what those spaces look like, so you can see some actual images. And like I said, it's very similar to what Arlington has done in their areas. And then we'll talk about some of the details. My staff has gone through and looked at the space that we're currently in right now. And we've tried to identify some key features. So for example, you know, the one conference room that we have, the Shark Tank, that gets booked and double booked. Same thing for the PD room that we have. There's not enough conference room space for meetings or people to meet. So let's turn to the last pages, and then I'll answer questions about the details. So we've been on this course for a long time. I don't think anyone expects that a strip mall is the best place for a central office to be located. But now we are, because of our staff, we are out of space at our central office. We can't add any more cubes. We just added a whole set of cubes to Dr. Park's area on the back side. That has been a challenge for us. So originally we wanted to be a teacher workspace where they could have laminators and die cut machines, and now that is a cube farm. So we are out of space. We have people that are double booked. Second, I talk about we're geographically isolated if you think about we're in the Carrefour Shopping Center as far as proximity to our schools. Another concern that we talked about when we've been discussing this all along is the future of the Carrefour Shopping Center. You know, they're part of the Western Gateway expansion. And so we believe that they do have intentions that they're going to redevelop that area. And so the space that we have would not be available. A lot of businesses in that area, like, you know, Macaroni Grill is out front. The suit store, I don't remember what suit. Josephine Banks has now moved. It's becoming very limited. So we're concerned about our future in this location. And I think then we get to some of the things that are really more attractive to us. We are beholden to the city's schedule for our board meetings, for work sessions. I don't like the fact that when we record our work sessions, it's on a little video camera. I would like all the time to have this type of coverage for what we're doing. And so I think that this space gives us the freedom that we can have all of our meetings full-time in those spaces. And then one of the things that's different that we've decided from Arlington, you see these types of boxes, I requested that they be movable so that they can go behind the stage. We could put them in the warehouse so that when we have professional development, when we have speakers coming in, there's actually a raised stage that the speaker can be on the stage or other functions in the same space. We're not locked into it just being a board space. Then, of course, the security in our area, I don't know if you know, we're in like 4 different areas now. The Germantown Education Foundation is in one spot. We have a west wing, we have an east wing. HR is in another section that we have. That is not a secure location. We have people coming and going and winding up in the wrong office all the time. We actually had to put a buzzer on human resources to control people's access to it. And then I think one of the more upsetting things is that we're paying $13,000 a month, which is a challenge for us. It's $156,000 a year when you look at what we're paying for rent. And so really what I'm requesting is that we switch over to lease payments for mortgage payments for central office. And then up to this point, we have spent $133,000 so far on the central office design. And the people who really prompted this procedure was A2H. They said, why are you waiting to design central office? Their prediction of savings is that we save $500,000 to $750,000 by bidding both projects at the same time. Because if you think about a construction company coming out, they're doing all the dirt work, all the plumbing, all the electrical. They're not remobilizing to build a central office and then a new school on the same site. Also, they think that it makes it a bigger project, and so you'll get different construction companies that may be willing to bid on this. So there could be savings on the elementary school side of this too. So they were the first ones who really prompted this process. So I know that's just a history of why are we talking about a central office? Why are we looking at this new location? So just for your knowledge, the timeline, and this is what we need to talk about today so that you can start thinking about how do we pay for it becomes the most important part. So we got to go back in time a little bit. I don't know if you remember the June meeting that we received the timeline for construction and build.
You gave us another one.
Yeah, there's another one.
There was one in our,
It's been modified a little bit, but for the most part, it's still on tap. And both projects have been presented consecutively as we've been going through all of the commissions. So this the first half of this is just a review of what you've already seen that we talked about from June. So we've been through Board of Zoning Appeals, we've been through Planning Commission, we've been through Design Review. At the current time, the State Fire Marshal and City Engineer are reviewing plans for the buildings that we have. And so once those processes are stamped, they start doing the bid packages, and that's what goes out to the actual contractors. We are going to, and this is what we have to discuss about how do we pay for this. The objective for us was to, people who are selling their house, I don't ever recommend, and we did not do this, buying a house before you sell your other house. That's what we're trying to avoid. We wanted to work it out, and that was my request to the city for funding, of how do we switch over lease payments for mortgage payments with that while we're still paying on the place that we are right now, having a place to move to. So if we were going to go the city route, now we'll talk about another option that we do have, we would have an MOU with the city that y'all approve in January, which is why I wanted you to the board to talk about it now so that y'all can get your heads around, ask questions before you would have to sign an MOU. So their goal is in January for us to sign an MOU to borrow money for this project.
I was going to say, can we just take a step back and let's
Sure.
just talk about how much in total are we kind of talking about, in pieces, and then in pieces,
Yes.
of this is how much would be?
Yeah, so it comes in.
Okay.
So what's happening with the school site, and we would also want to do in this one, is we could have an early site clearing package. So they will clear trees on both properties, both sites. So know that that's something that would come up. Then in February and March, that's when the construction, so I'm getting to the money,
Okay.
that we would put out to bid for these projects. And we do it as an add-on and a deduct. So when they bid them, we can actually see the cost of both projects, that the amount that we need to save for that. Now this is where we get to the money. In order for us not to have to pay twice, if we borrow money, you can wait a whole fiscal year, and the city brought in PFM, their company that they always use to look at their financials and look at their bonding. And so we could borrow money in July of one year and not have to pay it till the July of the next year, because that's the earliest that we could be in this building. So they worked backwards. So if the new school's available for us to put furniture in and for us to actually be inside of the building in July, they said that the earliest that we could borrow the money would be July of this coming July of 2018. So the difference for the board would have to be, how do we fund that project for those 4 months? So if we go to bid in February and they start construction in March, we're talking about March, April, May, and June that we would be paying the construction costs for that bid. I think the other objective for us to
Is that, I'm sorry, is that the same for the school as
No.
well, or just for the new, just for the op?
This is not going to bond. So when they went to bond, they already have received that funding. And so the way we pay
So we
for the
can
new
dip
schools,
into
we do a
that.
draw.
Okay.
We don't actually
Well, I'm
have the money.
sorry, but
And-
we request a draw
Yeah,
off
so
of
we
that.
request a draw,
Okay.
and it's very specific that it was for the new school purpose, so we couldn't
Right,
like
yeah, no, yeah.
have that and
So
do it for this.
basically, those 4 months would come out of reserve.
Yes, so
And
those 4
and
months
how
we-
much, I mean, like, so,
Yeah.
how
So
much is
what
the
we did
project
was-
in total?
So we're looking at a square foot, so we're looking at 16,000 square feet. So until we go to bid, we don't know. I can tell you that Arlington's was 2-story and 2 buildings. They were looking at all in with FF&E, which is all the furniture. And here's one of the differences. We have a lot of
the furniture,
furniture, a lot of stuff already in our central office equipment. So we're not gonna need as big an FF&E account. But 3.5 to 4 million is what we're predicting based on all-in architect's fees. And that'll be less, because right now we are paying architect's fees out of our operating budget to pay for, we're already, 164,000 in for architect's fees. So know that that's less too.
Okay, and then how much is 3 months? I'm sorry, I just don't
So
have
we're
any
guessing,
idea.
so that's what we're saying here for, it could be 800,000 to $1 million.
In those 3 or
in
4
that- in
months,
that-
through the end of June?
Yes, through the end of June. So,
And that's getting the land ready, getting architects out there, getting the construction
yes.
prepared,
Well, that's good.
electrical,
They're starting
water.
construction. They're
Okay.
pouring foundation. They're doing, it's everything. They're starting to put up walls. You're paying for the building up to that point. You're not finishing off the construction, but you're already.
And so we would anticipate that would start in March, along
Yes,
with the school?
The new school, because
Okay.
that's the savings.
Oh, no, I
Yeah.
agree. I just want to make sure I'm thinking through that correctly. Okay.
So then, the way they're talking about doing it, the funding formula they have, they said without affecting their bond rating and looking at the city, they're talking about a 12-year capital outlay note. So it's a loan from a bank. It's a competitive process. They put that out, they bid on it, and we would pay it off in 12 years.
So how much would our monthly payment be then?
So we're doing a prediction of what the market would be, and so they've done some calculations. $250,000 to $286,000.
So it's less than what we're paying?
Well, no, it's
No, it'd be
actually, it's
more.
more, because we're paying about $150,000. It's about $100,000,
So it's gonna be
$130,000 more. But we do
For
have.
12 years?
Yes, for 12 years.
But it's an investment.
But it's an investment, so that's the difference. You're not paying lease
Yeah.
payments.
Yes, people
Yeah.
tell me houses are investments,
Yeah.
money pits. What, tell me again, like, repeat the amount again, 200 and what?
Yeah, so you see this money right here. So what we're looking at right now, so those last 3 lines are really the money for us. So we would receive the district capital outlay money, so we would borrow $3 million in July of 2018. In July of 2019, that's when we would have to start paying that money back. The goal for us is then, because we have that year delay, we would transition our current lease payments over to mortgage payments, $156,000. So the question becomes, where's the other $100,000 come from a year for those 12 years?
When the
The answer is,
portable
we
lease.
also have $200,000 in portable leases that are coming up. So once the new school opens, we will be removing those modulars that are on lease. We don't own those from the other schools. And so I think it's exciting for us that this creates a lot of flexibility for us for projects, because no longer is that money dedicated to lease payments. We can now use that for
Capital improvements.
capital
or-
other capital improvements.
So currently, we're spending $200,000 a year.
We're spending $356,000 a year on lease payments.
For the
lease to
portable.
central office.
Right,
and
but
200
for the
portable.
portables, it's
Yeah.
the 200.
That's
And that's for all that are at Dogwood and all that are at Farmington.
Correct. Not
Okay.
all. We have some old ones that are.
Well, I'm sorry,
yeah.
the ones that are the newer
nice
ones.
mod-
Yes, sorry,
yes.
yes, the modular, the
modulars.
modular, not the portables.
Yes.
Okay, okay.
So
Okay.
how much per square foot did you base, what range did you use?
So that's the challenge right now is, we're doing a prediction and they're doing a cost analysis right now. They're predicting.
I
anywhere
know
from-
it's
$200 to $210 a square foot.
And Riverdale was about, what, 168?
Yes. The market has changed.
And that's for school and central office, or just for central office?
For the 210 or
For the 210, 220?
Oh, we're guessing that's for both.
Okay, that's something,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
so we're kind of lumping.
That's just a
it's-
construction
yeah,
cost
yeah,
estimate
okay,
right now.
okay.
For
So,
both.
yeah, it's
So
gone
all
up.
we're really adding is about $8,333 a month.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
If you don't take into account
And
the portables that are.
that's right. And
Right,
so and also what we're saying is.
that's right.
We
Or
can do
more
this
than.
more
with
than.
zero impact. Now, there's another fund, which I talked to you about, Lisa, is I am talking to a developer who would they would actually take over the construction project for us, and they build this, and then it's a lease-to-own process. So for this body, another option that I'll have for you is that they build it, we lease the land to them, and then we're paying them amount above and beyond what the cost is for the building. So it reduces our monthly cost. We could do it for less. I'm still waiting on the amount of funding for them. We could do it for less, but it is, think about anything you rent to own. They are making their money off of this project too, but there's less risk up front. So I will have that option for this board from a developer who that's what they specialize in.
That's a less attractive
I would agree.
consideration for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm much more inclined to, with the 200,000 that will go back into the general fund once the lease of portables rolls off, and what we're already paying, if we come in at 200 to 210 a square foot, it's a manageable cost for us.
Mhm.
Because I don't want to get in a situation where we're having to drain on an annual basis any money off the reserves. Well, you wouldn't do it you would do it out of reserves.
Yes,
You would never
for that
do it
one
out
time.
of
But we need, because we have to have a certain amount of reserves to start to open the building, to
Oh,
open
yeah.
the schools.
We have to have 5 to 6 million.
Right.
But this would
You wouldn't
be
even
any
charge us.
amount that
No.
we dip in to use the
I'm just
reserves
getting-
from now
we just
until the
keep
end
talking
of this fiscal year
I know.
would be well
Yeah, but we keep
before
talking about the
we have to open the doors of the school.
That's right.
It's a whole year, so we
That's
would have
correct.
another
Yeah,
year
that's,
to.
say that again.
Sorry,
just a
okay,
second.
yeah. So the reserves, so if we're looking at this, the amount of money that we'd be dipping into would just be the reserves through this end of fiscal year. We would have a whole other year to build up the reserves for opening the school, because we wouldn't need to be dipping into that.
So when we talk about impacts on, and I would also like
And
to say.
we would
Talking about
and we would get
money.
that paid back in theory. I
And
mean,
this is-
and I guess
yes.
that's what you had mentioned before
Some.
was.
Eventually, but we'll get out of the
Well,
reserve
because
business, yeah.
the question will be, how much of a loan do we want?
That's right.
That's right, because, so for example, if we take it, I'm just gonna use very round numbers here, don't anybody hold me to these, but if you say that the building's gonna cost us $4 million, and we have to pay $1 million up front just to get us through that hurdle through the end of this fiscal year, the question would then be, do we get a loan for $3 million, or do we get a loan for $4 million?
And the
But I think
city,
you also have to
the
look
city
at
said
too-
financially they could get us a loan for $4 million, but the
But I think you
payment
also have
cost,
to-
you're talking about
Well, no,
$356
that's,
a year.
but I think that's the question we
Yes.
have to ask,
And I
have to
think we-
answer
But we
in the
can't
whole.
answer it
Not now,
till the end.
that's right,
Yes.
but if we are in a reserve issue, we have that ability to do that, right? I mean, if we
Right.
feel like our reserves are coming down too low, or we're gonna have to use more for,
But I think we also need to keep in mind that the new school has gone from 168 to 210, and the money that we've gotten through bond is not gonna pay for
Well,
it. And so we are going to have to take some money.
That's what makes
No,
we're gonna have
I'm
to
with you.
take some money out
That's-
of reserve, and then in addition, when we open the new school, and I agree, well, we have been since day one, we have been very frugal in
And I-
our spending.
and I would say-
Which is why we have a
Absolutely.
Yes.
reserve. And can
Absolutely.
we continue that? We'll see if we have.
'Cause-
some
and
more
here's
reserve
what
this year,
I
but
would
we also need
clarify,
to
yeah.
consider, we need
Yeah.
additional $1 million once we open the new school, almost.
1 to 2 for
Yeah,
operating.
For operating.
But here's
And
the.
that's not, we
yes.
don't have more students.
But we'll
No.
talk about that. There are ways we can.
well, but I think but I think that's the whole package we have to look at. We
Yes.
have to see, to your point, Linda, when we see that the other construction costs have gone up and how much we think we're gonna have to take to reserves, just because we spend that money this year out of reserves doesn't mean that it won't somehow get back in there if we need it, because we would have access to
Correct.
that cash.
And there are other options too that we have, and I know Mr. Kathy won't be happy about me saying this. We look at that county commission funding that we get, and you know that comes, we'll say $1 million a year.
Yeah, sure.
We can combine 2 fiscal years together. So one of the things that we can also look at, so if we come in with this new school and we are over costs and over projection, you can do that one-time cost. You can use that capital money on that school that one time. You can't use that capital money for debt payments, so we can't pay off the new
Right.
school every single year with that, but we could take that money and invest into that new school if reserve is a concern. Now, it does slow down the capital projects that Mr. Kathy has, so the Farmington HVAC projects like that then go on the back burner when you do that. But know that you do have the potential for $2 million when you combine 2 fiscal years back to back in June and July that you can put towards new school construction.
Well, that's a good point that you bring up. So is that a potential, because we just had that reserve move in, the 969, that we could use that, would we use that first and then go into the reserve for other
That
things?
is a
or-
board
That's a
decision.
board
Okay,
decision.
okay,
But
so-
then,
but that's-
but then realize, not that that's not a bad thing, but then we don't have, we may not be able to spend money on new HVAC for Farmington.
Right, or we make the decision if the timing's not right, that may, could that be something that we'd spend, out of the
The next
reserves
year.
or whatever?
That's
Yeah,
right.
so,
Next year,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
So
a lot.
lots
so we
of-
have lots of
lots
options,
And
it
then
sounds
finally, I would
like.
say is, have faith in us. And the only reason I say that is, we built, and it was close to a $12 million reserve, and it'll probably be up over that in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I will clarify, that's money that wasn't budgeted. The
Right.
school board didn't sit down and say, I'm gonna make sure we have $1.5 million, $2 million that's going towards reserve every year. That's my staff who are working to save money and being frugal with what we're spending and what we're doing.
And I know
So-
from day one, you were, the board and
Yes.
Andrew, we started very, very lean.
Yes. So I share your concerns.
No, I
We have the exact same things. We're worried about what's coming for the future. And two, I also think about the fact that, and you've heard me say this, I think we have to be careful of the fact that the function of our funding and the money that we're getting from the state is not for the purposes of capital improvements.
right.
The funding of the money that we receive from the state is for instruction.
Yes.
And so I really think that we have to get out of the mindset of every capital need or project that we're supplementing with district funding, that we really have to go to our funding sources to say, we need a new middle
I
school
completely
addition.
agree.
We need new element, if it grows so much and we have
We need
2,000 apartment units
Right.
and that produces so many kids, we need another elementary school.
Right.
I think those are when we go to our funding body to ask those requests,
I agree.
those
I
needs.
don't, and figuring out the funding is going to be the finer details, but I don't think we have a choice. Because I think we could conceivably be looking for office space in very short order. And I think we need to plan on,
Well,
this would be nice to be a
yeah.
grown-up district and have
Well,
our own office.
well, and I actually think that this is the start. I think what we're seeing, and your team has had the ability to do this, is we're getting ahead. I mean, we're planning to have something so that when something happens, it's not that y'all have actually had the time to think through it. You've had
That's
the time,
right.
I mean, which is something you.
Proactive versus responsive.
Well, because you've actually had the time. I mean, so I think I commend you and your team on doing this, because what's going to happen is, more than likely, as soon as we flip the switch, we're going to be ready.
That's right.
I mean, and I think that's where, I think where you see the work that you put in pay off.
Any more questions
good.
on central office funding?
So January, we will have some options for the board. It'll be our request to either have an MOU for the city or work out a funding arrangement with the developer who will lease this to us.
Then
And
I
I'm
would
sure
like
we
to-
can have some kind of work session,
That's
maybe
Yes.
separate to
request that
discuss
we have a
that,
work
so we're not
session.
discussing it before the meeting.
Most definitely.
That would be
Yes,
great.
that would
That
be
would be,
much better.
that would be great.
That would be good. Any other questions then?
I have one question not related to this.
Okay.
And it just goes back.
And then we still have policy. We still have.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's
we-
right. Well, we'll
we
do
have
that.
our-
It's not- I'll just have a
we
minute.
still have a couple
It's
things
nothing
on the
huge, yeah.
agenda.
So let's just go.
Next is,
We don't want to go through this meeting tonight.
the last work session, when we were going over the one section of board operation policies, there was a suggested change, and I think Ms. Landers and Ms. Jones came up with an insertion for policy SBO 1.101. And Ms. Landers, do you have it in front of you, or?
Yes.
Do you want to tell you what, say what
we-
Ms. Jones and you?
We are proposing to insert a new number 4, which would read vision development. The board shall create a vision for the school system and ensure that the vision becomes a reality through the development and regular monitoring of long-range plans in accordance with policy SBO 1.701 and renumber accordingly. May I speak to this? In our discussion, we do understand that when we look at the strategic plan for the next 5 years, this is not something strictly reserved for the board. We understand when we're talking about vision that includes community input. The staff, I mean, we're a team. So obviously it's every member of our staff, it's the community, it's everybody. But I think the feeling was that it was the board's responsibility ultimately to make sure that we stated a clear vision. We have a great vision right now, and so that's not our problem. But how this came about is because of orientation for TSBA, and as Lisa quite rightly pointed out, what is currently in our policy is what we are required by Tennessee Code. So this would not be required by code. It would just be something that the board would ensure happens.
Similar to some of our other policies, that we go a little bit beyond what is required by the code to ensure that we're, and again, not saying that we're not doing this, it's just more putting in on pen to paper what we are doing and what the expectation is from the role of the board.
Any discussion?
Do you want to add it as a fifth bullet, or do you want to add?
You know what, and I just want to say, this is not something that has to be done. Maybe we could just put it on the agenda from January, and that way Ms. Vijay will have it all
Absolutely.
prepared for us, because this is not something like that.
It's not time sensitive.
No.
It is
So-
not time
I think we
sensitive.
just wanted to present in case there were any questions or
Yeah,
concerns.
so that would be ready for next meeting.
And I do feel like if you have any concerns,
I don't.
then we need to hear them, because I think that plays into what
Read-
as a board we can do.
Read it for me one more time.
Vision development. The board shall create a vision for the school system and ensure that that vision becomes a reality through the development and regular monitoring of long-range plans in accordance with policy SBO 1.701.
I might ask that you stop at long-range plans and omit in accordance with policy SBO 1701.
Rationale?
Because we have to go with school board operations 1.701, which is long-range plans. Not only does it speak of long-range plans, but it also speaks of identifying major factors, developing and implementing a 5-year plan, establishing annual program improvement objectives, and basing major budget decisions on long-range plans.
I mean, certainly removing it is neither here nor there, because we're bound by 1.701.
For what the definition
It was
is.
more of a
Just linking.
reference point for board members. But it certainly, I wouldn't have any objection to taking it out.
I mean, I could go either way. I think, again, it just links it to that, which gives a better
Yeah.
definition.
And we can always, if the board's in agreement and we can work with Ms. Vijaya, we can always put a reference at the base,
Yeah, like a footnote.
like a footnote.
Yeah.
Would that
I think
work
that
for
might
you?
be
Similar to the
better.
code,
That's
similar to, that's a great idea.
Why don't we, what we'll do is we'll put that as a footnote.
It would be numbered number 5, vision development. But
No, we wanted number 4.
no,
We want, that was the
you're
motion.
taking out promotion?
No,
We're inserting
they're
vision
renumbering.
before
Renumbering.
promotion, because
And
then promotion
renumbering
would come in promoting the vision.
Oh, okay.
Was the
Just
thought
renumbering.
process, was just renumbering it.
So
Promotion
promotion would be
number
number 5.
Yes,
It's just,
Mhm.
just renumbering.
just to kind of flow.
Why
So
not,
4
Ms.
is vision, 5 is promotion.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
and Ms. Landers can get with you.
Okay, sure.
And make those noted changes that we just talked about with the footnote, and then it can just come forward before January's meeting. Would that work for everybody?
I think it's, yeah, that's fine.
But one, policy oversight, educational planning and fiscal planning are all TCA.
Yes.
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 And I think we have those referenced on there, right?
And we can just do a cross-reference
Of the policy down
to
at
the
the
policy.
bottom.
We can work it out.
Okay, I'll work.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
You can
Thank
just
you.
follow up with Ms. Jay.
Okay.
And then, I think one final
you.
thing, did you want me to bring up about the insurance?
Yes,
Um,
we wanted to, you want me to explain it?
You can explain it.
We wanted to provide an option for board members that if you decided, you get paid for this position. If you would-
stipend.
A stipend, yes, it is not like Shelby County Schools. But if the board
When you say
would-
we get paid,
Yeah.
that's kind of.
Yes, if you would prefer,
With the
we could
stipend.
add you on our health insurance in lieu, that would be an option for board members. So if you're not covered on your spouses, or if that's an option, only during your time of, while you're on the
Right,
school
right.
board. Because you are.
We're not going OPEB.
And it's really, because, yes, we're not doing OPEB. But the same as, because you are employees, that is an
Right,
option that
right.
we have for our other
Right.
employees that we thought we would extend to the
So
school board.
if you're interested, please see.
Contact us and we will do the
Sure.
paperwork
See 'em in
for
the
you.
big-
It
you know, the
counts
beginning
as-
of January or in the next couple weeks. That would be great. Okay? Thank you.
One other thing, just a small nit, on the meeting agenda, on the actual board meeting agenda, I think just over the last couple of meetings, we've lost the either new business or further business down between, after announcements, and I was just wondering if we could add that back
That's
in.
easy.
Want to add?
Yeah, and I think Mrs. Landers actually said a better word. I think before it had been new business, but further business might be a better
business,
term when
yeah.
when you look at
'Cause we
Robert's
really
rules, yeah.
Don't bring up new business.
But I think we have to be careful though, and this is parliamentary. We have to be careful that you're not getting around the vote on an agenda. So with the board, remember, it's the will of the board that y'all vote and say, this is what we want to talk about during this session.
Right.
So if the board, for example, said, we aren't going to talk about this, then you could say, well, I'm going to talk about it in new business. We have to be careful of how you use a new business, and I don't think it is as common when we saw other districts that do that. We can add that back, but know that your agenda is supposed to be your agenda. So it's more
Yeah,
about
yeah, just,
announcements
yeah.
or.
Because they feel, I asked a couple of districts and they said, like, if you have anything come up in the work session, it's being added to the board action items.
You're already adding it on the agenda.
So-
Oh, I don't disagree. I think it's just going and following Robert's rules.
What
Just-
is- what
yeah,
are your
what is it?
On that?
I did do the research about other districts, and it's not commonly used, but then they don't also avail themselves of any kind of
Parliamentary
of a
procedure.
parliamentarian. As long as the understanding is, it's there for business, it's not there for comments, it's not there for.
Announcements are announcements, or that's why we have announcements.
If you have an announcement,
It's-
then we should give it to the chair to make the announcement. I think it's the right thing to do if something comes up, and there are times that things come up that it doesn't fit under new business. And it does give the chair the option of putting it under further business. So I just think it's, if the five of us have a clear understanding of what it is there for, it's kind of innocuous. That's my word.
Yeah,
I like
That's
that.
a nice word, I like
it
it.
is.
Starts with an I,
kind
too.
of
It's a good
elevated.
Scrabble word.
Okay, just real quick, just to recap, what we're doing is we're pulling off the consent agenda, the resolutions off the consent, and we're making them 9F.
And one question I have, and again, y'all are, is, one of the things we talked about with the resolutions was just bringing it, to just not having a discussion about it, more so just highlighting it. I just thought that change that we're making to the honor rolls and the class ranking is pretty favorable. I mean, I think it's a thing that we're trying to do for our students and make it, I think, more favorable for them. I don't know where else that would get highlighted, and I was just wondering if that would be something we would want to pull off the consent again, to treat just like the chairman explaining what we're doing, and then we vote on it, just to highlight the good work that our administration's doing.
And I don't disagree with the sentiment, but that's what first readings are for.
And this is second
We're on the
reading.
second reading.
And this is second reading. So
Good
we-
point. Point well
first-
taken. No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Right, but wasn't it on the consent agenda in the first reading?
Oh, that's right, because it was last month, it was in the consent agenda.
I can't.
It was, yeah, that's why I brought it up. Thank you for reminding, because I went back and we've never really brought it to the attention because it was under consent agenda in the last meeting.
And I think we were making there was a possible revision to.
There was.
No,
We were waiting to see about
absolutely,
that
and
as
so
well.
that's why I was just thinking, we haven't really highlighted it, and again, I just think it's good
Would
work.
that be
If we
something
pull
to-
if we pull it off, which I have no problems, what I would do is that time either have the superintendent discuss it rather than myself, because that's something that came from the district staff.
Or could it be in your report?
Or could it be in your superintendent's report and we
When you
can
talk
leave it
about
on
it,
the
just-
consent
we could leave it on the
agenda?
consent
You may
agenda.
already have a
You
planned
already have it
report.
planned, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
But I mean.
Well, if it's on there, then it's on, I just want to make sure it got pulled out.
Make
We
it an
don't have
action
to.
item.
Well, Mr. Fairbairn, we'll just pull it off the consent and put it on as an action item, and then,
Do you want to?
Yes, and then just make it 9.
Or 9G.
But
9G.
it's combined with another policy, so you want to leave that policy in the
Yeah.
consent?
Yes,
Leave the other one.
Leave the
Yeah,
other
the
one.
other one's fine.
Be 4.602,
yeah, we take off,
and it's going to be
9G,
9G.
9G.
and we'll move the, and then, would you want to speak to it? Thank you. That's it, I think we're adjourned. Everybody has
Thank
a little
you.
10-minute break.
Living large.
That was last couple meetings we were.
Yes, we were running.
Oh, I lost my bag.
Good work, everybody.
Yeah, that was good.
Sorry, didn't mean to bump. Sorry.
I said no for like 5 years, and I persisted. And she came around, she likes it now. For 5 years. There you go. Doing anything, huh?
Nobody's in it. Unzip my boot and see the Christmas socks, and they were like, "Are you kidding me?" And so I got them all socks for Christmas last year, patterned socks. So now he talks about.
Do you have any of that up? That's the real question.
I do not. I don't think it's myself. You know, that would happen.
Oh, valid point.
See, okay. Draw the line. Do you want to get through this way?
Oh, no, I can
or-
go that way.
Okay. You can go that way. It's not as easy to move around here as it used to be. You have to go all the way around. Yeah.
Snacks.
Hello, snack bag.
It's just what I need.
Like angels in that food.
Gotta get some new variety.
I'm tired of all that same old.
And I know where they're hidden, so I hit them every now and then.
Who all is out there? Like, who are the highlighters? Because I feel like you're not going to have a round highlighter.
No, I mean, this is. The past 2 times I've sat like where the light is like,
And you were saying, you felt like it stand up spotlight.
it's very.
John, guess what I saw on Sunday?
Yeah, my boy.
Did you see him?
Did you get that?
I walked right up, gave him the old handshake.
Kevin, like you genuinely concerned too.
Man, he called me funny and called me paranoid and called me something. But I got a feeling he's getting ready to stick his hand back in there. I got bad. Do I know?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Germantown School Board meeting on this December 18th. At this time, I'd like to call our meeting to order and ask everyone for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Ms. Landers, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Landers. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We have made a couple modifications. Let's see. IP 4.602 Policy Honor Rolls Awards and Class Ranking will be moved to 9F. In addition, the board's resolutions will be moved to, no, that will be moved to 9F, and the honor rolls and awards and class ranking will be moved to 9G. So at this time, is there a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
I move to approve the agenda as changed.
Second.
Roll call?
Ms. Landers?
Yes.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Parker?
Yes.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Ms. O? Yes, thank you.
The agenda has been approved for this evening. Next on our agenda is recognition and awards. Superintendent?
This is one of the best parts of my job and what I get to do, but it's kind of bittersweet because I think in this role you miss that student interaction, and I can't tell you how special it was to be a coach, be a teacher, be working with students in the classroom, so you kind of miss that component of it. So at this time we're going to recognize some of those students in our district who've excelled, who've done some things that are incredible. So first, we would like to recognize our holiday card contest winners. Each winner has had their work framed and will receive a gift card from Hobby Lobby. The official holiday card winner has had their card made into a greeting card that's sent out by the district. And this is one of the hardest things to do as a superintendent is we actually have these all hang up over the central office, all the submissions, and so we go in and try to judge whose is the best. So it was hard. So if yours was selected, realize it was a tough decision, but a lot of people voted for this. So first, we'd like to recognize our elementary school design winner, Haley Park. She's a third grader from Farmington Elementary School. We'll come around to the front. She gets her picture back in its frame. Next, from our middle school design and also one of our lacrosse players, Rachel Christenberry, 8th grader from Houston Middle School. Congratulations. Next, from Houston High School, Alexander Buckley, who's in 12th grade at Houston. Oh, yes, and they also get a gift card to Hobby Lobby. I forgot to mention that, so make sure you get your gift card. And also, our official GMSD holiday card winner, Julie Ernest, 11th grade from Houston High School. And this will take a little coordination. So when your name is called, if you will stand up so that Ms. Fisher can recognize you and then give you the right certificate so we don't get them mixed up, that'll be helpful. This one's a little bit tougher for me. I used to coach against Coach Wolf when he was at Ridgeway. And I actually said to him one day, hey, man, would you ever consider coming over to Houston High School? And he said, yes. And the rest was history. And we had been rivals, but we were always good friends with each other. So I'm really grateful that you decided to come over here because you've continued your excellence at Houston High School that you started at Ridgeway. But this is tough because it's like watching someone dance with your girlfriend. I remember what it was like on game day. I remember that excitement, that feel that you have when you have that big game that you know it's coming, and that's all you can think about the night before, that you can't sleep because you're so excited. I know what it feels like when it is such a tight game that you're waiting on that one bounce. You're waiting on that one person to make a mistake, and that's the difference between winning a state championship and not. I know that feeling. I know the chances that the ball's just going to bounce clean and you're going to have a freshman forward who's the one who gets to bury it in the back of the net. Those opportunities don't come often. And so as a coach, as a player, that's something that you need to remember is your whole life, those chances aren't going to be that plentiful. So take advantage of it, enjoy it, savor every minute that you have. And it's also bittersweet for those seniors who've realized that this has been something exceptional, something exciting that you're a part of. Savor it, it's something special. And so now I'm going to read the script I was supposed to read. Germantown Municipal School District's Houston High School girls soccer team has had quite the year. The varsity girls soccer team won the program's 8th state championship with a 1-0 victory over Collierville. And that's hard to beat a team 3 times in the same year. That's difficult. This is the 36th team state championship for Houston High School's athletic program. In addition to the state championship title, the varsity team went undefeated this season. For 14 consecutive years, the Houston girls soccer program has won the district, regional, and sectional championship while earning a berth in the state tournament. This is the longest active streak in Tennessee. Aside from being the 2017 Tennessee state champions, the Houston girls soccer team is ranked #1 in the nation by USA Today. That's incredible. You exemplified perfection, and you represented the district in your accomplishments. And I know the mayor stole some of my glory because he's already recognized you. But thank you for being here today, and we are proud of what you represent for Germantown Municipal Schools. So at this time, I'd like to recognize the players. And I do have something special to give you that Coach Wolf has given me the honor to give you your TWSA medals today along with your certificates. So that's something special too. So first, and I'm sure I'll mess up some names, Amaya Andrews. Come on up. And you have to stay up here when we're done. We'll take a big picture at the end. Congratulations. I'm going to put it on. Haley Bronson. Lindsay Bush. Carly Cananzaro. Carly here. Gracie Chapman. Lauren Clark. Raquel Conrad. Caitlin Kraus. Adrian Darnall. Sorry. Eve Davis. Gabriel Dahl. Gabby. Madison Dismuke. And that was one of the worst things I've seen them put anybody through as goalkeeper, to be put in the last 2 minutes of the game. They were putting you through, through the mill. Jordan Domke. Catherine Dukes. Madeline Eskin. Ella Garner. Milla Garner. Parker Galinas. Peyton Galinas. Jordan Green. Emma Greggett. Kate Handel. Congratulations. Emily Hartzell. Congratulations. Megan Hines. Emma Harrington. Alyssa Higgins. Gloria Holland. Audrey Holmes. Grace Johnson. Jenna Kemp. Zoe Kirsten. Gertie Langford. Congratulations. Carly Lashover. Maggie Leslie. Amanda Merkel. Who else is designing that? Kirsten Monk. Tiana Newsom. Chloe Notowich. Callie Ogburn. Olivia Proctor. Riley Quinn. Emma Rialis. Emma Rialis. Congratulations. Bailey Rose. Molly Rose. Abby Rushwin. Gracie Rushwin. Alexandria Scholes. Maya Scott. Campbell Shaw. Sydney Samoji. Hallie Stafford. Anna Summers. Gillian Vandergrift. Gillian, sorry. And last but not least, Kara Young. Now this may be a first. I think we need to go out in the hall outside that wall so that we can get everybody in one big group picture. So let's take a moment and adjourn just for a second so we can take one big group picture out in the hall. I think that door may be open where you can go. Yep. Come on, Coach. You want to enter? When we recognition I think we've ever done.
Jones. Ms. Fondo, could you shut the door back there? Thank you.
We are gearing up for the legislative session that will be beginning in January. Arlington is hosting a legislative breakfast that will be on January the 5th. We will be able to speak with our legislators before the session begins on January the 9th. Later in the agenda, you will see or hear about some resolutions that we will be taking, along with some other opinions on items that are in the legislation that will be coming up in this session, just to kind of voice our opinions, voice our stances, so that we can hopefully have a venue for that. Also, the Department of Education, given the issues that have been followed with the Tennessee Ready, the TN Ready, has reconvened its task force, and they have added Representative Mark White, which is, I think, really great for us because we now have a voice that's new and one that's local for us. Their first meeting was on December 11th. They will meet most months from now until June. Those meetings will be live streamed, and we will start sharing that information out. But hopefully we will be able to hear a little bit more about the concerns that are going on and maybe some changes that might be coming out of that. So we will see. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Next is the chairman's report. First, I just want to thank everyone, the district staff, teachers, parents, and students who participated in the Germantown Parade representing GMSD. Special thanks to Kate Crowder and the district staff who worked on building a spectacular float to represent GMSD with an original song that was sung by our very own superintendent and students. And I might add that GMSD took first place for our float. So thank you. I know Ms. Crowder is not here tonight, but I know it was a lot of her hard work and imagination that got that going. Next, I want to update everybody on our rezoning committee. Focus group meetings of the rezoning committee. One's been held on November 9th, and we had one this past Friday on November 15th. November 9th minutes and the committee members are listed on our website under quick links if anybody wants to go and see those minutes. The minutes from last Friday's meeting will be posted. They have not been posted yet. At the December 15th meeting, the rezoning committee was divided into groups, and they had an interactive activity where we had, my pen keeps falling away, doesn't it? Thank you. Where the city of Germantown was laid out and divided by neighborhoods was the exact number of students in our school system in each neighborhood, and they worked to try to rezone our district. They came up with some plans, and at the next meeting when they meet in January, they will look at those plans and list some of the pros and cons to those plans, and those will be listed as well on our website. In January, the board will have a work session, and we'll be doing the same activity, interactive activity, where they'll be looking at all the neighborhoods again and the school districts and where to rezone. In February, there'll be 2 public forums and a survey for the public. And in March, the board will be taking a vote on rezoning. So again, if you want to keep up with those minutes, you can go to quick links on our website. And finally, I just want to thank all of our students and teachers for all the many holiday choir, band, and orchestra concerts that were held this past month. I know several of our board attended many of those, and we always enjoy them, so thank you. Next on our agenda is financial report. Mr. Jones?
Okay, you have your financial reports for the month ending November 30, 2017. First on the balance sheet, the school operating or general fund reports total assets, liabilities, and fund balance at Total assets, liabilities, and fund balance at $220,000. Capital projects, total assets, liabilities, and fund balance at $1.9 million. The same in the health insurance fund at $1.9 million. The OPEB trust reporting total assets, liabilities, and fund balance at roughly $1.8 million. And the general fixed asset account group being updated for the purchase of land for the new school is right at $70 million. On the statement of revenues and expenditures, within the cafeteria fund, Airmark continues to report a profit year to date. We're now are continuing to cover district expenditures, and we actually have a reserve or fund balance in the cafeteria fund now at $56,000. Within the health insurance fund, we continue reporting to you month-to-month comparison of health insurance claims, and those claims have stabilized to historical trends. $940,000 was received from the capital, or within the capital projects fund from the Shelby County Commission for their 17-18 funding. And finally, in the OPEB Trust Fund, investment performance reflects an unrealized gain of a little over $102,000 year to date, which is an actual return of 7.6% through November, and that's ahead of our annualized 7% return projected by our actuary.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next on the agenda is Superintendent's Report.
I am going to give you an HR staff position update and let you know where we are after the first semester of hiring. We do have some positions that do have changes, either due to retirements or resignations or people or new positions that the board previously created. At Dogwood Elementary School, Christopher Wicks was promoted internally. He was a teaching assistant to the workplace readiness coach, one of those new positions that we talked about for our special needs students, and that's an incredible opportunity for Mr. Wicks. Shakina Washington was hired in his position as a teaching assistant on December 11th of 2017. At Farmington Elementary School, and some of these may have changed since these dates, but they were in the process of filling them. They began SPED preschool teacher interviews on December 7th, and so they were in that process because of growth of filling that position. At Houston High School, interviews for a physical education teacher are due to a resignation at the beginning of the school year, and so in that process, so I think they're just now completing hiring a new PE and wellness teacher at Houston High School. Sergio Catron has been hired effective date January 4th, 2018 as a special education assistant due to a resignation also at Houston High School. At Houston Middle School, we do have a new hire, Cynthia Davenport. She'll start on January 3rd, and that's due to Ms. Walker's retirement at Houston Middle School. At Riverdale, they're in the process of interviewing applicants for general education assistants, and so they're finishing up that process, and I'm sure they're close to a recommendation for that position. And then we do have 2 pending hires that are open positions out there that we're looking to hire, and so spread the word on these positions. A school nurse position opening at Riverdale due to a recent resignation, so there is an open school nurse position at Riverdale. And then there's a staff accountant position open at the district office, and so those are being posted, and we will be hiring for those, so get the word out for those positions. And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Superintendent Manuel. Next on the agenda is citizens to be heard. Mr. J, do we have anybody? Okay. We do not have anybody at this time. Yes, Ms. Boutwell?
I'm so loud, I don't think you have to. Okay. My name's Lauren Boutwell, and I live on Allen Court. I decided to come and talk to you guys tonight because my son told me this morning that he didn't want to wear a jacket to school. So first I want to say that I appreciate living in a community and having the kind of school district where I've actually talked to most of you in person, and I've communicated with you via email, and I appreciate that. What I wanted to say to you corporately is that I need this body to be our leadership, which, of course, and to have vision. So to that end, I wanted to talk to you about the thing that's most important, that's most needs addressing now, and that's our space. I think a lot of people have talked about space in the 3 to 5 year range, and we've addressed that. And we probably need to address it some more, but what I want y'all to think about is immediate needs. Wilson told me this morning he didn't want to take a jacket to school because he didn't have a place to put it. He couldn't put it in his locker because it doesn't fit in there with his other things. And I thought, well, we could put a little coat rack, and I was like, no, we can't. We don't have any room. We don't have room for the stuff that we need at school. Problems you guys know about. Our bathrooms are in disrepair. When there's an open house type event, when everyone comes up to the school, parking's a disaster. It's really too crowded. But there's other things, and I think that overcrowding our schools impacts, and that is our kids end up getting tests that are just easy to grade versus a good representation of what they know. And also I think there's an increase in behavioral problems. So those are the problems. And what I would like for you guys to do is just have innovative thinking. We could use our space differently in some cases, like starting in January. We could have more temporary space, probably also immediately. We could even use off-campus spaces in some situations for meetings or, even parent meetings. I'd be happy to go to the district office for a meeting. Some of this will cause, well, it already is causing stress to our teachers and our students. And I think one more thing that we could do to fix this right away is to hire enough teachers. I'm thrilled that we're hire enough teachers for the ratio we want. I'd love for our district to have a 1 teacher per 18 kids ratio. That may be ambitious. But if we went ahead and hired teachers for that, even if we don't have rooms for that, we could take some of the pressure off of our kids who deserve our best efforts. We could also take some stress off teachers who deserve to have a job they're happy with and also a life. So even if there's 2 teachers in 1 classroom, that's fine. And our kids deserve our best. We don't get to be excellent unless that happens. Just wanted to thank you guys for all the work you've done this year so far. I want us not to be the kind of district that just doesn't address these problems because we don't know what to do about them. I'd much rather say I'm so proud to be part of a district that tried new things, even if they didn't all work, but they tried it. So thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Ms. Boutwell. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda is the approval of the minutes, the second reading of policy child abuse and neglect, approval to join PEPPM National Cooperative, miscellaneous budget items, and I will say the majority of them deal with the funding that we received, the federal funding that we received that we've just now gotten for IDA, Title I, 2, 3, 4. In addition, I will mention one of the budget amendments, just so everyone knows, is for a stipend of $250 for our teachers and clerical and everybody in the district for the work that they did for us to be an exemplary district. And that is it under our consent agenda tonight. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve all the items in the consent agenda. Second.
Roll call.
Yes.
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 Next on the agenda is 9A, revision of policy FM 2.805, purchasing. This is going to be approved if passed as after a first reading. This policy, just for those who weren't at the work session, is falls under purchasing and is adding a line that says conditions which lead to major disruption of educational activities or day-to-day operations. This would give the district staff the ability to respond in situations where we have major disruption in our schools to replace items such as the Houston Middle School clocks right now and bell system that has not been working. Do I have a motion?
I move to waive the second reading and adopt the revision of policy FM 2.805 purchasing after 1 reading.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Yes.
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 Motion is passed. Next is 9B, revision of policy SS 3.400, student transportation management. This again has been asked to be approved after first reading. The student transportation management policy, this is all being changed due to legislation that was passed this past year regarding student buses. Just to give everybody just real brief, this involves our district taking on more responsibility for complaints on buses. Parents and anybody in the community now, there will be bumper stickers on the buses along with their bus numbers so that they can call a hotline and report any kind of trouble. Parents will be notified in January on our website how this will work, as well as our teachers and administrators at the school will be instructed on how to adhere to all these new laws that have been passed down to us on student transportation management. Do I have a motion?
I move to waive the second reading and adopt the revision of policy SS 3.400, student transportation management, after one reading.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Yep. It keeps going off. Yes.
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 Yes. Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is 9C, election of chairman. I will be going off after serving 2 years according to our policy, so we'll be needing to elect a new chair for the board. Do I have a motion?
Jim, I move to nominate Amy Oaf as chairman of the board.
Do I have a second?
If I would speak, as I did research under Robert's rules, there is no second needed for nominations within elected offices.
Okay. Roll call or discussion first?
I would like to move to nominate Betsy Landers as chairman of the board.
Discussion?
Chair. Ms. Oaf has been a leader in GMSD, PTA, and PTOs, as well as her church and in the community. I believe given her education background, she could serve our district extremely well as chairman, as well as being newly elected would bring our community's voice to the board. Mrs. Oaf will not be campaigning in this upcoming 2018 election, which I think is going to be a little bit crazy, given all the offices that are up. And I think that that will allow her to give 100% of her time to the district. We have a lot to accomplish in 2018, and being able to have a chairman that is 100% focused on what we're bringing to the table, I think would be a benefit to us. I believe that this would not allow any distractions in her role.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. The motion on the table is for the nomination of Ms. Landers. Roll call.
Chair, I would like to suspend the rules of having a roll call for this and do a ballot.
They can be read aloud after you write them.
You can do that, I think, yeah.
You can do that
Yeah, you
and
can.
publish the votes.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, no, no, yeah.
I have paper.
Oh, that was just going to
Thank
Got
you.
it? No, you should always have this. Thank you.
Again, the motion on the table is for Betsy Landers as chair.
Is it for Betsy or both of us? Yeah, you've got,
First two.
you have two.
Yes.
So Ms. Landers or Ms. Oaf?
And so we write one name on the
Yes.
piece of paper.
Do we write our name as well,
As to who
so that
casting
there
the
is no
vote?
secret vote? So you write your own name and then, okay.
Just to, for clarity's sake, make sure that let's circle the person that you're nominating or you're voting for, and your name's in the bottom.
I put my
Good
name
point.
twice.
Do we pass them or fold them or just hand them?
Either one.
Thank you, you're welcome.
No, the reason you do that is for uniformity. Since all of them, so you don't have idea when they come on. That makes clear somebody's, you know, so it's back so you know what ballot you distributed. Okay, go ahead, come on.
The vote should be circled.
Yes. This whole circle, Amy Oaf.
And you have to, it has to be public vote. We have to say who nominated for who. So you have to read who nominated.
Who not,
Okay.
who voted?
Amy Oaf, voting Amy Oaf. Betsy Landers, voting for Betsy Landers. Susan Jones, voting for Amy Oaf. Lisa Parker, voting for Betsy Landers. Linda Fisher, voting for Betsy Landers. Am I clear?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Vijaya.
So in total, 3 votes for Ms. Landers, 2 for Ms. Oaf.
Thank you, Ms. Vijaya. Congratulations, Ms. Landers,
Congratulations.
as chair. Next on the agenda is the election of the vice chairman.
I would like to nominate Linda Fisher as vice chair.
I would like to nominate Amy Oaf as vice chair.
Here we go again.
She's the only one that came prepared with paper. Oh, you do? Oh.
Yeah. Okay, again,
Thank you.
write your name, the person voting, your name, and circle the person you're voting for the vice chairman position. Thank you, Ms. Vijaya.
Thank you, ma'am.
I know. It's not moving. Thank you.
Linda Fisher, voted for Linda Fisher. Amy Oaf, voted for Amy Oaf. Lisa Parker, voted for Linda Fisher. Betsy Landers, voted for Linda Fisher. Suzanne Jones, voted for Amy Oaf. We have 3 votes for Linda Fisher and 2 for Amy Oaf.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Vijaya. Linda Fisher will serve as vice chair. Next is the election of the Tennessee Legislative Network representative.
I would like to move that, I would like to nominate Suzanne Jones to remain as TLN chair.
Second.
Can I speak to that? I think Ms. Jones has done an excellent job this past year creating relationships with our legislators, facilitating breakfasts with them. I can't even count the number of times she's gone to Nashville, both to speak to legislators, to watch meetings, and actually been asked to speak in a committee meeting, which is outstanding in her first year as a TLN. So I am thankful for her and hope she has another productive year.
I concur.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call.
Yes.
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 Congratulations, Ms. Jones. She'll be serving as our TLN representative again. Next on the agenda is 9F, which we had moved off the consent agenda for the board's resolutions. The first one and I do have a bit of housekeeping. A bit of housekeeping. We had made some revisions during the work session to this resolution, but just a quick housekeeping. We did not change the title of the resolution to reflect what we changed in the body. So I just would like to make a note that the beginning title will be a resolution of the Germantown Board of Education to repeal the weighted letter grading of Tennessee schools, which will reflect what we changed in the body. Real briefly, this resolution is to let our legislators know that we are not happy with being assigned a letter grade A through F on the state report card. It's really grossly misleading to the public, as well as with the testing this past year, the major problems. It really is not fair for our students and teachers as well as our schools based on test scores. So we have prepared this resolution for our legislators. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the Germantown Board of Education to Repeal the Weighted Letter Grading of Tennessee Schools."
Second.
Is there some discussion? Or?
I would just like to commend Arlington, our sister school system, for bringing this to our attention.
I would like to say thank you to the board for entertaining some of my frustration with the original resolution, and I think it is strongly worded that we are unhappy with the lack of transparency, with the weighted system, and that we are very unhappy that we have testing that is faulty going into a faulty system to begin with. So thank you to the board for entertaining my frustrations and sharing them.
Thank you, Ms. Oaf. Next, under that same, I think there. Did you attach both of them under the same motion? Yeah. Also under that same motion is a resolution that Ms. Parker brought forward. Ms. Parker, did you want to explain it briefly?
Basically, this is a resolution to ask the General Assembly to verify bills that legislators submits to the public school system that would I guess that would have an impact on instructional time and also an impact on our budget. Our district and any district across the state of Tennessee's fiscal capacity. What we were trying to do is have legislators who are sitting in their office trying to think up bills that they could give us. if they could talk with teachers, administrators, superintendents, and if they could talk with, have an opportunity to work with those who this law would impact, all parties are doing what's best for the students of the state of Tennessee, and probably get rid of half of these bills that they're trying to implement. But needless to say, just trying to work with legislators to have a voice by the teachers and administrators about what they're trying to implement and how it will impact our kids.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Before we make a motion, whoever reads the motion, it has still in there, or in the alternative amend the letter grading, so please, you change it.
We've already
Thank
voted
you.
on that, right?
Is there a motion?
I move that the Germantown Board of Education resolution to ask the General Assembly to verify bills that the legislature submits to the public school system.
Second.
Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion is passed. Next is 9G. This is our policy. We pulled it from consent so that I'm going to have our superintendent explain what the district has come to us with. This is policy 4.602, honor rolls, awards, and class ranking. Superintendent?
Sure. I think one of the challenges that we've dealt with is the race for valedictorian, salutatorian, and how healthy is that race for students, and do they have the opportunity to take classes that they just want to enjoy or have an interest in. And the fact that that race for those honors credits, AP credits, has overridden the desire to push students' rigor. So the high school took upon themselves, and with our assistance, they formed a committee to really research with parents and students what are options for students to still have a system that recognizes student performance. And so this is the result of that work with the high school and with our academic department, so we thank them for their work. Effective with the graduating class of 2021, which are the current freshmen, they're going to move to a Laude system, which will be used to distinguish three range of academically high-performing students based on a cumulative grade point average. Individual class rank will be reported in deciles with the grade point average of each decile group identified. Two honorary graduation speakers, formerly valedictorian salutatorian, will be determined by committee review of portfolios submitted by interested summa cum laude students after the 7th semester. So summa cum laude will be with highest honor, it's 4.4 and higher, magna cum laude with great honor and praise 4.10 to 4.39, and cum laude with honors and praise 3.9 to 4.09. This is consistent with what you see universities are doing and also a lot of private schools in the area. And I think it encourages students to still challenge themselves academically, but also take those courses that may be of interest to them.
Thank you, Superintendent. Is there a motion?
And I do want to clarify, sorry, that this is second reading. The board has already passed this on first reading, so this is second reading.
I move to approve the revision of policy IP 4.602, honor rolls, awards, and class ranking.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Thank you. Motion has passed. Announcements?
I do have one. That I was remiss to mention during my superintendent's report. I think one of the things that we do want our community to be aware of is the safety and security that we have at our high school. In recent events, you know, there are always serious fights and incidents at schools, but we want to reassure our community that because we do have two school resource officers at our schools, we do have them positioned at arrival and dismissal along with staff throughout the campus. So we are trying to reduce the likelihood of incidents happening without appropriate supervision around the campus. And so that is something that we're always aware of, and we just want to reassure our parents that we are watching, we are being vigilant, that we know that we can't be lulled into a false sense of security with our students, that we are making sure that we're protecting students at all times. And so I just wanted to reassure our community.
Thank you, Superintendent. Our next board meeting is January 16th, which I believe is a Tuesday. Is it here in City Hall? And it will be held here in the City Chambers. And I'd like to wish everybody a happy holidays. And we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.